Hello friends, welcome back to the Paranormal M channel. How was your day? Drop a comment below and let me know. I'm a little tired today, but the moment I sat down and got ready to share my spiritual experiences from around the world with you, I instantly felt better. Thank you so much for all your messages. Now, let's get cozy, put on our headphones, and dive into today's story. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. Okay. I'm not totally sure how to start this, but I've carried it around for a while and I just need to say it out loud to someone who will actually listen. So, a bit of context. There's this old mountain spot people talk about, an old lodge that burned down ages ago. What's left is mostly brick walls, broken rooms, and these open edges where you can look straight out over the mountainside. People still hike up there and throw parties, raves, bonfires, whatever you want to call it. I'd heard vague stories after the fact, but before I went, I honestly had no clue what kind of reputation it had. If someone had told me it was the kind of place people had been whispering about for over a century, I might have thought twice. I got invited by this guy named Mason. Not a big name in the scene, more like someone trying to become one. He was talking about starting a collective, building a community, all that. I'd run into him a couple times before, so it didn't feel sketchy, just a random invite to a random night. The hike up took maybe an hour. You know how it is. Music faint in the distance at first, then louder as you get closer, like the mountain is hiding it until the last second. And when we got there, it was eerie, beautiful in a strange way. A hollow shell of a building, like it was holding its breath. Brick skeleton, blackened corners, empty windows staring out at the fog and the drop below. At first, the night was genuinely fun. Lights, people dancing, that feeling like you're part of something secret and temporary. I did take some stuff, more than I usually would, but nothing I hadn't handled before. I was pretty confident I could ride it out. Then, I wandered into this side room. No lights, like pitch black. And in the far corner, there's this one guy, alone, playing a single hand drum. A bongo, I guess. Just him and the sound. It didn't feel scary in the moment, not at first. I remember thinking, damn, he's actually really good. I stood there listening, barely able to make out his outline, just letting the rhythm hit my chest. But looking back now, I don't know. I get chills thinking about it. The way it felt less like music at a party and more like a thing happening. Like the room was being tuned to something. Later on, I went back into the main area and sat down near a corner because I was coming up hard. My thoughts were sprinting. I figured I'd roll a cigarette and ground myself for a second. And that's when I saw the cat, just sitting there in the corner like it belonged. I leaned down, reached out to pet it, really clearly, like I could feel how real it was about to be. And then I looked up for a split second and it was gone. Not ran away, not hiding, just gone. That was the first time in my life I'd ever had a hallucination that clean. It freaked me out because it wasn't dreamy or vague. It was like something snapped into existence and then got yanked out again. I tried to laugh it off. I told myself, okay, you're high, you're tired, it's a weird place. Everyone around me was still partying like nothing was wrong, so I forced myself to keep moving. But then I looked up, and I saw something that absolutely broke me. I swear to you, I saw a man standing on a stage, like an actual stage that hadn't been there before, wearing a bright white shirt, holding a microphone like he was about to speak or sing. And the thing is, there was no microphone set up, no speakers, no stage. I'd been in that room all night. I knew what it looked like. This wasn't a maybe. This was my brain insisting something impossible was happening. From that moment on, nothing felt right. Not just I'm too high, but like the the place itself wasn't neutral, like it didn't want you there, or it wanted something from you. By the time morning rolled around, maybe 6:30, 7-ish, the fog came in thick. Not misty, not pretty sunrise fog, like someone poured milk into the air. We started hiking back down, and we lost the trail more than once, at least twice, maybe 3 times. It's hard to count because it felt like time was skipping, and both times we got properly lost, this stranger appeared. A guy named Elias, or at least that's what he told us, just stepping out of the fog like he'd been waiting. Calm, almost too calm. He didn't act confused about where we'd come from, didn't ask questions, just pointed us back, walked with us for a bit, and then disappeared again when we got to safer ground. The part that haunts me is how impossible it felt. How did he find us twice in that fog, on that mountain, at that time? It felt like the kind of coincidence that doesn't really feel like coincidence once you're living inside it. I wasn't religious back then, like, at all. I would have called myself practical, skeptical, whatever. But that morning lodged something in me. This feeling that I'd brushed up against something I didn't understand, and then something else had stepped in and made sure we left. And then, not long ago, maybe 6 weeks back, I'm in a shopping center and this older Dutch guy stops me. Polite, gentle, not aggressive, just looks right at me and goes, "Do you believe in God?" I said no, kind of awkwardly, and kept walking. But it stuck. It got under my skin for some reason. Then, about a week later, I'm getting ready to go out again, and I can't stop thinking about that mountain lodge, like it's looping in my head all day. That night, the rave we were going to got canceled, so we changed plans and went to the beach instead. I ended up telling a couple friends the story, people I'd never told before. Just laid it all out, trying to make it sound normal, trying to make it make sense. A few hours into the night, this random guy comes up to us. Asian guy, maybe in his late 20s or 30s. Not much English, but friendly. We chat a little, and out of nowhere he says, dead serious, something like, "I go Hellfire Club, very bad, make my soul go boom." Not haunted, not creepy, not bad vibes. He said it like he was describing an injury, like something had actually happened to him. And I just froze, because I hadn't mentioned that name. I hadn't even been thinking of it as a name anyone else would know. And hearing it out loud like that, on a random beach night, from a stranger who barely spoke English, made my whole body go cold. So yeah, that's it. That's what happened. I'm not trying to convince anyone of anything. I'm just telling you I went to a place I didn't understand. I saw things I can't explain, and since then, it's like the world hasn't felt as simple as it used to. And honestly, sometimes I still don't know if I'm more scared of what I saw or of how real it felt. So, a little bit about us before I get into the weird stuff. I live in an apartment with my older sister Marissa and her husband Evan. Marissa's really rooted in her faith, not in a scary, pushy way. She just genuinely loves church, worship music, sunny mornings, that kind of thing. Me? I believe in God too, but I'm more free-spirited. I'm the one who collects spooky little trinkets, watches horror movies for comfort, and treats Halloween like a personality trait. We've always been opposites. Same mom, different dads, and we're 16 years apart, with me being the younger one. My mom used to laugh and say, "My girls are night and day." And yeah, I'm definitely the night. Okay, now the reason I'm even telling you this. For about the last year and a half, we've had these little moments that kept stacking up. At first it was easy to brush off, like knocking sounds coming from the wall by the bathroom or the kitchen. You know how apartments are. Pipes, settling, maybe something in the walls. Annoying, but not exactly paranormal, right? But then it started getting personal. The first time, I was in the shower. I clearly heard the front door open, footsteps, and then what sounded exactly like Marissa's voice, bright and casual, go, "Hey," like she'd just come home. So I hurry through thinking, oh, she's on break. I'll talk to her for a second. I get out a few minutes later and the apartment is empty. I told myself maybe she swung by quickly. She works like 5 minutes away, grabbed a drink, left again. Totally possible. Later, when she actually got home, I was like, I tried to catch you earlier when you came in. She just stared at me and went, "What are you talking about? I didn't come home." And I was like, "Marissa, I heard you. I heard you walk in and say hey." She swore up and down it wasn't her. And the way she said it, no joking, no teasing, made my stomach drop a little. Because she wasn't playing. She was freaked out too. Then about 3 weeks later, it happened again. But this time, I was the one being blamed. It's around 10:15 at night, and we're all in our rooms, lights out, winding down. I get a text from Marissa. "Hey, what did you need?" I'm like, "What?" So I text back, "What do you mean?" And she goes, "Evan said you called my name." I literally sat up in bed like, nope. I hadn't said a word. I was scrolling on my phone in complete silence. I told her, "I didn't call you." And again, same feeling. Not dramatic, not funny, just this quiet, unsettled little pause where you're both thinking the same thing, but neither one wants to say it. Then another night not long after that, same kind of setup. Everyone's in bed, it's late, and Marissa texts me again. She tells me she sat up and said out loud, "What did she say?" Because she heard me call her name and say something else, like a sentence or a phrase, but she couldn't catch the rest. Evan, half asleep, was like, "Huh?" And she goes, "Ang, called my name. What else did she say?" And he's like, "She didn't say anything. I didn't hear anything." So Marissa texts me, and I just reply, "I swear to you, I didn't." At that point, it wasn't just maybe pipes anymore. Because pipes don't sound exactly like your sister. Pipes don't call your name when you're asleep. And then, a few nights ago, something happened that made my skin go cold. It was just me and Marissa home. Evan was out. The apartment felt normal, calm, cozy. We had the TV on low and we were just talking about something random. Our 2 cats were curled up and asleep nearby, and our dog was knocked out too, like fully relaxed, deep sleep. And out of nowhere, we heard this deep, guttural growl. Marissa is not someone who swears unless she's genuinely scared. She grabbed the remote, shut the TV off fast, and just looked at me with wide eyes and went, "What the hell was that?" And I didn't even answer right away, because I didn't want to influence what she thought she heard. I asked her, "Tell me what it sounded like to you." And she didn't hesitate. She said, "It sounded evil, like an evil growl." When Evan called on his way home, she told him immediately. He tried to be logical, like, maybe it was a raccoon or something in the walls. But both of us knew. We both just knew. It wasn't scratching. It wasn't scurrying. It wasn't an animal sound you hear and go, "Oh, that's gross." This was the kind of sound that makes you stop breathing for a second. And Marissa told him, "No, that's not what it was. It didn't sound like an animal. It sounded angry." We've had smaller things too, like little puzzle pieces that don't make sense on their own, but together they start to feel like a pattern. One time, a cat toy ball rolled across the floor toward Marissa, stopped like it hit an invisible wall, then rolled back the other direction like it changed its mind. No windows open, no air on, nothing vibrating, just movement. Sometimes the pets will all just stare into the kitchen like they're watching something pass through. And our dog will sit up and do this low bark, then a growl, like he's warning something away, not playing. A couple times we've opened a cabinet and found small dishes neither of us recognizes, like they just showed up. Marissa and Evan don't know where they came from, and I don't either. It sounds silly until you're holding a plate you know you didn't buy. And I have this little lamp in my room that will turn itself on or off at random times. I've tried to blame it on the bulb, the switch, the outlet, anything. But it's inconsistent in a way that makes it hard to shrug off. So yeah, that's basically where we're at. I don't know what it is. I'm not trying to claim I've got some haunted apartment situation for attention. If anything, I'd love for it to be boring. But when you start hearing your sister's voice when she isn't there, and then she starts hearing yours when you're dead quiet, and then something growls in your living room with that kind of rage, it messes with you. And the more I've read, the more one word keeps circling back in my head. Something that imitates, something that copies voices. A mimic. And honestly, I hate even saying that out loud, because once you name something, it feels a little more real. Okay, so I've been debating whether to even tell this story out loud, because the second you do, you can hear how it sounds. But I genuinely want to know what other people think, because it's gotten to the point where we've run out of normal explanations. So I live in this apartment with my sister, Hannah, and her husband, Mark. Rent around here is unreal, so we're doing the teamwork makes the dream work thing, splitting costs, sharing space, helping each other out. It's actually been nice, except for the part where the apartment has started doing things that make you stop mid-sentence and go, no, wait, what? It started small, like sounds. There's this weird knocking noise that comes from the kitchen, but it's not consistent. It'll go quiet for days and then randomly happen again. The best way I can describe it is, imagine someone stirring a spoon in a glass mug. That little clink, clink, clink. At first we were like, okay, pipes, old building, whatever. But it's just oddly specific, like it has a rhythm. Then the voices started. And when I say voices, I don't mean muffled neighbors through the wall stuff. I mean we'll hear each other. Like I'll be folding laundry and I'll hear Hannah say my name, clear as day, from the hallway. Then I'll call back and she's not even home. Or Hannah will swear she just heard Mark talking in the bedroom, but he's in the parking lot. The creepiest part is it's never all of us hearing it together. It's always one person hearing it alone, which makes it worse because you're standing there like, do I trust my own ears right now? But the worst sound, the one that made our upstairs neighbor text us in all caps, was the banging. I'm not exaggerating when I say it sounds like someone inside the walls just hammering, like heavy, angry pounding. The kind of noise that makes your stomach drop because it feels too human. Our upstairs neighbor, Linda, has texted Hannah more than once like, are you guys hearing this? And it's almost always super early, around 1 to 2 a.m. That's the time window, like it's on a schedule or something. And then there are the footsteps. This one is personal because it happens when I'm in the shower. I'll be rinsing shampoo out of my hair and I'll hear steps come down the hall, slow and steady, and then stop right outside the bathroom door. Not pacing, not passing by, just stopping, waiting. The first few times I tried to be rational. Hannah must be home for lunch, or Mark needs something. But I'd get out, wrap a towel around myself, swing the door open, and nobody's there. And they both swear it isn't them. And okay, Here's the part where I know people are going to have opinions, because this is the moment that made me fully sit up and go, something is wrong. One night, Hannah and I were in the living room just talking. Normal conversation, nothing scary, nothing weird. And we have pets, so there are toys scattered around. This little cat toy, small, lightweight, just rolled across the floor toward Hannah's couch. Like someone gently pushed it. It stopped for a second, and then rolled back the way it came from. No AC running, no fan, no draft, no slanted floors. Our floors are level. And even if there was air moving, it wouldn't stop in reverse direction like it changed its mind. Hannah literally froze mid-sentence and just stared at it, and she goes, "How did that just happen?" And I'm sitting there, heart pounding like, I genuinely have no idea. The pets make it worse too. Then there's the smell thing. This is one of the weirdest ones because it's so specific. Back in March, I had a car accident. Nothing horrible, thank God. I swerved to miss a dog that ran out, ended up stuck in a ditch, and I called Hannah to tell her I was okay and that my uncle was coming to get me. We hang up. Fine. She tells me a little while later, she and Mark suddenly smelled my perfume strong, like someone had sprayed it right in front of their faces. It lasted a few seconds and then vanished. No reason for it. No bottle spilled. Nothing. And recently, we've started smelling cigarette smoke, like heavy, fresh smoke. Except none of us smoke, and as far as we know, neither do our neighbors. Hannah was the first one to smell it, and then it started happening to me too. It's the kind of smell that makes you automatically look around for a person. And the lights. Oh my God, the lights. I have this little galaxy projector light in my room, one of those that makes stars on the ceiling, and it will randomly turn itself on and off. But it's not random in the normal bad wiring way. It almost feels timed. Like it turns on right when I'm thinking, okay, I should go to bed. Like it's nudging me. And when I wake up, it's off again. Also, I've walked out of rooms, totally alone in the apartment, and found lights turned on that I know I didn't touch. We even had this lamp that started flickering and clicking on and off. We assumed it was a cheap lamp, so Hannah got annoyed and threw it out. Bought a brand new one. Nothing fancy, just a regular lamp. And a week later, it starts doing it too. She was so mad because she was like, "So I threw away a perfectly good lamp for nothing." She even put in a maintenance request. They came, checked the outlet, said it was fine. And yet, the lamp still acts up sometimes. And then there's just stuff moving. Not like full poltergeist, chairs across the room drama, but little things. Keys not where you left them. Small objects showing up in places that make no sense. You do that thing where you try to convince yourself you just forgot, until it happens again and again. Last week, I heard something that still makes my skin crawl. I was sitting quietly, and right by my ear, like right beside me, I heard this little sound like, not a word, just a sharp, close noise. I sat there frozen thinking maybe it came from outside. Maybe it was a bird or someone in the hallway, but it didn't feel distant. It felt next to me, like something leaned in and made a sound just to see if I'd react. And then this morning, this is what finally pushed me into telling somebody else. I took the dog out, came back in, used the bathroom, and then grabbed my keys because I needed to move my car. I closed the bathroom door, and I know I closed it all the way because we're strict about that. The cats are obsessed with shredding toilet paper like it personally insulted them. And my cat Miso, sweetest demon alive, loves pulling towels off the rack. Nothing like stepping out of a clean shower and finding your towel on the floor like a tiny crime scene. So I closed the door, fully, no question. A few minutes later, I walk back down the hall and the bathroom door is cracked open. Not wide open, just open enough to notice. like someone didn't want to be obvious, like someone just wanted to remind me, yeah, I can do that. And look, I know grief and stress and life can mess with your head, so I need to tell you this part too. We've had loss. Our mom passed away a few years ago. Hannah also lost her dad not long after. And I lost a cat I'd had basically my whole life, then another older pet the next year. So yeah, we've been through it. We're close though. Hannah and I are really different, but our bond is solid. And me? I'm the odd one out. I love creepy stuff. Horror, mysteries, true crime. I collect weird little oddities, old antiques, spooky memorabilia, the kind of things people side-eye you for. I also have a ridiculous book collection, like, to the point where it's becoming a storage problem. I've loved reading since I was a kid, and it's my comfort. So part of me wonders if I brought some kind of weird energy into the space, or if our grief left a door cracked open, or if it's all just a series of explainable things that happen to line up in the creepiest way possible. But then I think about the footsteps stopping outside the bathroom, the voices calling when nobody's home, the banging in the walls at 1:30 in the morning that even the neighbor hears, that toy rolling across the floor, stopping and rolling back. And I'm left with the same question every time. What is happening in our apartment? And why does it feel like it's getting bolder? Hey, so let me walk you through this, because it's not just one creepy moment. It's years of little things that slowly added up, and I still don't quite know what to make of it. I grew up in the southern part of Tasmania, way out rural, like properly rural. The kind of place where you don't get random visitors, and the road leading in isn't even properly sealed the whole way. My parents have lived in the same house for about 2 decades now. They moved in when I was a teenager, and during those early years, my dad was often away. He was in the Navy, deployed for long stretches at a time. It was mostly just Mum, me, and the quiet of the bush. And the first time it happened, I was still pretty young. We were driving away from the house, Mum at the wheel, and I remember glancing back through the rear window toward the front yard. And there he was, a man, just standing near the front door, like he belonged there, like he'd been waiting. It made absolutely no sense. There wasn't a neighbor who'd casually wander over, and we didn't have visitors who'd show up without calling, especially not out there. I stared hard at him, trying to make my brain name him, place him, explain him. And then I blinked, and he was gone. I told Mom as soon as I could, and she just sort of brushed it off in that gentle, practical way she has. She said something like, "Maybe it was your dad checking in on us." I think she genuinely thought I'd imagined it, or maybe she didn't want to entertain anything stranger than that. But the thing is, I didn't stop seeing him. Not constantly, not every visit, but often enough that, as the years rolled on and I got into my 20s, I started to accept he was part of the house, the same way the wind rattling the gutters was part of the house. At first it was small stuff, things not being where I left them, the odd sound that didn't quite match the settling of timber. Moments where you pause and go, wait, did that just happen? And then you talk yourself out of it. Until one day, I couldn't. I was in my mid-20s, staying there on my own for a bit. It was just me and the dogs, 2 of them at the time. One was a big male mastiff mix named Hugo, and the other was a little stocky staffy called Mabel. And they were loud, right? Like, aggressively loud. If a leaf fell wrong outside, they'd announce it like it was a crime. So I'm in the shower, and everything's normal. When I get out, I'm towel drying and half-dressed, and the bathroom has this frosted window that faces the path leading up to the front door. And I see someone pass the window. Not a shadow, not a vague blur that could be anything. An actual adult man walking by at normal speed, close enough that I could tell he was pale-skinned, had short, dark hair, and was wearing a plain, long-sleeved shirt and dark pants. My stomach dropped because the dogs hadn't barked, not even once. That alone freaked me out more than the figure. I rushed to get dressed, moving fast, fumbling a bit, and it took me, a few seconds? I flew out toward the front door, listening, waiting for the dogs to lose their minds like they always did. Nothing. When I reached the big glass slider at the front, both dogs were there. They were staring outside, completely alert, but silent. Not growling, not barking, just watching like they were tracking something they didn't understand. And there was no one. No movement, no footsteps, no door closing. No place someone could have hidden in that time, not without me seeing them, especially out in the open yard. And there was no answer. After that, I stopped trying to talk myself out of it. Years later, more recently, I ended up living at my parents' place again for a while when I was doing my doctorate. Those months were long and quiet, lots of studying, lots of late nights where the house feels extra empty even when it isn't. One afternoon, I'm in my room staring at the line of novels on my desk. I'd been switching between books, undecided, running my fingers over spines, doing that thing where you want to read but can't choose. Eventually, I straighten them so they're neat, flush, and lined up. Then I go to the kitchen to make coffee. I come back, mug in hand, and one book has been pulled forward. Not tipped, not fallen. Pulled forward deliberately, like 3/4 of the way out, as if someone had hooked a finger over the top and tugged it. I just stood there holding my coffee, staring at it, feeling this odd pressure. Not threatening exactly, more like a strong suggestion. So I did something that probably sounds ridiculous, but in the moment it felt like the only polite option. I read that book. Like, okay, message received. And then, a few weeks after that, there was another moment. This one wasn't about objects or noises. This one was him. I was sitting in the kitchen dining area, focused on something, notes maybe, and I saw a man walk past me in my peripheral vision. Just the sense of someone moving through the space, right where people normally pass through. My brain instantly assumed it was one of my family members. But then I looked up, and everyone was still in the room the figure had supposedly come from. And there's no way someone could have walked past me from that direction without me seeing them earlier, without them having to pass my line of sight first. I felt this flash of shock, like my whole body went cold for a second. And then, it faded. Because here's the weird part. I've never felt afraid of him. Startled, yes. Confused, absolutely. But not scared. I've never had the sense that he's angry or malicious or trying to hurt anyone. He feels more like a presence with a routine. Like he's passing through because he always has. And still, it makes no sense. This house is remote. It isn't ancient. We know there were only a couple of owners before my parents, and as far as we know, everyone connected to the place is still alive. There's no family tragedy we can point to. No obvious story where you go, of course, that explains it. For years, Mom and I barely talked about it. It was one of those topics you kind of keep folded away because saying it out loud makes it too real. But recently, we did talk, properly. And Mom admitted she'd noticed something too. That the walking past moments, especially near the front of the house, seemed to be happening more often. And that's what's been sitting heavy with me. Because we always treated it like, well, he's not hurting anyone. Let him be. Don't stir things up. Don't mess with anything you don't understand. I've stuck to that. I don't play with spirit boards. I don't invite things in. I don't experiment. That's always been my line. But now I keep wondering, What if this isn't just harmless background noise? What if it's someone stuck in a loop, or someone trying to get attention because something's wrong? What if the increase means distress? And I don't like the thought of that. I just know I don't want to ignore it anymore if ignoring it means leaving someone, or something, to suffer. Okay, so I want to start by saying this happened a few phones ago, back when we were using this old, kind of clunky security system. And I still get mad at myself for not saving the footage properly when we upgraded everything later. Because we had it. We had actual video. And knowing that makes this one of those stories I tell when I need to remind myself, like, no, I'm not imagining things. So this was about 5 years back. I was at work, just in the middle of a normal day, when I got a motion alert from the backyard camera. Nothing unusual, at least that's what I assumed. But I opened the clip anyway, and I swear to you, there was this dark, smoky-looking haze, like a shadow, but thicker. It wasn't fully solid, more like a transparent black mist, gliding across the top corner of our garage, over the back patio, and drifting straight toward the back door. And the weirdest part? It didn't just fade out like a shadow would. It looked like it slipped through the side of the frame, like it passed into the wall near the door and vanished. At first, I tried to be logical. I told myself it had to be a trick of the light, maybe a small cloud shadow. But it was way too localized, too small, and it didn't match how the sun hit that area at that time of day. Then I thought maybe it was a bug close to the lens, out of focus. Except it didn't move like a bug. It moved like something intentional. Slow, smooth, almost careful. Still, I shrugged it off. Because what else do you do, right? Meanwhile, my mother-in-law, Marisol, was at our house watching our little boy, Jonah. He was just over a year old then, still at that stage where he'd cling to you like a little koala and fall asleep anywhere as long as he felt safe. About half an hour after I watched the clip, curiosity started chewing at me, so I pulled up the indoor cameras just to see if anything else looked strange. And I catch Marisol in the kitchen, smudging. Now, she's the type who'll do that sometimes. She's always been spiritual. If a house feels off, she'll open a window, say a prayer, light the bundle, do her thing. So seeing that didn't freak me out right away. I just remember thinking, okay, interesting timing. But when I got home, the second I walked in the door, she didn't even let me set my bag down. She goes, something happened. And I could tell by her face she wasn't being dramatic. She looked shaken, like she'd been trying to hold it together for Jonah's sake, and now she could finally let it out. She told me she'd been sitting in our recliner in the living room with Jonah kind of sprawled on her, his little belly against her chest, just relaxing. The recliner sat right beside the open doorway to the bedroom, so you could see part of the room from that angle. And out of nowhere, Jonah pops his head up, like something caught his attention, and he stares into that bedroom. Then he starts crying. Not fussy crying, hysterical crying. The kind that comes from deep fear. She said he went stiff and grabbed at her shirt like he was trying to climb into her skin. So she sits up fast, turns toward the doorway, and she swears she saw this tall figure. Like a person made of shadow. Somewhere around 6 feet, maybe taller. It was pressed against the door frame, like it was trying not to be seen, and it was peeking around the corner at them, like it was watching. She said she could make out the shape of a head and shoulders, and this part gets me every time. She said it looked like it had one hand on the door frame, like an actual person would, leaning around. Marisol didn't freeze. She stood up immediately, grabbed Jonah tight against her and just let it have it. And she said the shadow didn't walk away. It just thinned out, like smoke sucked backward, like it evaporated into nothing. After that, Jonah calmed down pretty quickly once she carried him out of that area, but she told me her hands were shaking so bad she could barely light the smudge bundle. Still, she went room to room anyway, opened windows, prayed, smudged the whole house. So while she's telling me all of this, I'm standing there with that backyard video still in my mind, and I ask her, really casually, but my heart is pounding, "What time did this happen?" And she tells me, and it's the exact timestamp from the clip I got at work, the exact same moment. I didn't even say anything at first. I just pulled out my phone and showed her the recording, and the look on her face, it was like all the color drained out of her. We just stared at it together, then stared at each other, both of us realizing how impossible that coincidence was, because she hadn't known about the alert. She hadn't talked to me. She had no reason to be smudging unless she truly felt like something had happened, and I hadn't told her anything about the mist because, honestly, I hadn't even decided it was worth mentioning yet. That's the part that still gives me chills. That split second of proof. That moment where it wasn't just someone's story. It was two separate experiences lining up perfectly, like they were connected. And even now, I still wonder, why our house? What was it doing outside first? Why did it come in through the back, like it was sneaking in? And why would it peek around the bedroom door at a baby like that? I don't know. I don't have a neat explanation. I just know what we saw and how it felt. And I know, for once, I wasn't the only one. So, this is a true story from about 7 or 8 years ago, back when I was working security at this conservation area just outside the city. It was the middle of the day, bright, normal daylight, nothing spooky about it. I'm posted at the little gatehouse with a couple coworkers, and we're doing that classic standing around pretending we're busy thing. Then I see this one guy coming up the access road on a BMX, and I mean, he looked striking. He's completely shirtless, wearing black jeans and dark shoes, and his bike is black too. Like, everything about him is black. The whole vibe was intentional. He wasn't dirty, wasn't sweaty, didn't look roughed up at all. No tattoos, no scars, no sunburn, almost weirdly fresh. Skinny guy, maybe late 20s. He rolls right past the gatehouse, but instead of going into the entry lane like a normal person, he slips through the exit lane, basically bypassing the security arm like it's not even there. Just straight through, like he belongs. So I hop in my work truck and roll after him, because at the very least, I've got to get him turned around and back to the gate. I catch up a decent distance inside the park and pull alongside him, and I'm like, "Hey, pull over a sec." At first he ignores me completely, just keeps pedaling like I'm not even there. I try again, and eventually he stops. I'm talking to him from the truck window, keeping it calm, but he's immediately hostile, super belligerent, like I'm personally offending him by speaking. And then he starts saying this strange religious stuff. Not like casual, God bless stuff. More like intense, prophetic-sounding lines. I can't remember the exact wording anymore, but it was along the lines of warnings and destiny and messages, that kind of energy. He finally turns his bike around, still muttering, and I follow him out at a respectful distance just to make sure he actually leaves. We pass the gatehouse again. Yep, right through the exit lane again, like he's committed to using it now. And we head down the access road. And this next part, I swear, it's one of those moments where you just blink and go, is this really happening right now? Partway down the road, he stops, gets off the bike, faces the sun, raises both hands up like he's about to receive a signal from space, and starts chanting. Not yelling, but like rhythmic. And then he does this little dance, just a subtle hip sway, almost ceremonial. I'm sitting there in the truck watching him like, half amused, half confused, not quite sure if I should take it seriously or not. It was funny in a what on earth way, but also just unsettling enough that I wasn't laughing out loud. Then he stops like someone flipped a switch, gets back on the BMX, and rides off. No fight, no escalation, nothing. Just gone. None of us got his name. Nobody at the gatehouse recognized him. And honestly, if that was the whole story, I would have filed it under weird dude doing weird dude things and never thought about it again. But later, I went to check the gatehouse surveillance. We had 3 cameras, one covering the front access road coming in, one pointed at the exit lane, and one facing the rear stretch past the gatehouse. This guy should have shown up on all of them, except he didn't. Not because he avoided the cameras, he went straight through their view. He should have been right there, clear as day. Instead, every single camera glitched at the exact moment he would have entered frame. And the thing is, those cameras saw cars and trucks ripping through all day, way faster than a BMX. We never had them do anything like that. Not before, not after. We tried everything. Rewound it, checked timestamps, checked for corruption, checked for system errors, whatever you'd normally blame. But the end result was the same. No image of him, not even a blurry frame. So to this day, I can't explain it. I don't know who he was, where he came from, or why the cameras all decided to fail in perfect timing like that. All I know is, I followed a shirtless guy on a black BMX out of the park in broad daylight. And somehow, according to the cameras, he was never there. So, my grandma passed away in October 2022, and ever since then, I've had a few dreams where she shows up in this really comforting way. Those kinds of dreams feel like a gift, honestly. But I've also had these other experiences, like sleep paralysis or astral projection, where something tries to look like someone you love, and it's not them. And this one still makes my stomach drop when I think about it. I had fallen asleep on the couch with the TV on, like the kind of sleep where you're not even trying to go to bed. Then suddenly I felt awake. Not normal awake, more like my mind clicked on before my body did. I could see my living room, but everything looked kind of smeared and foggy at the edges, like reality had a bad filter on it. And that's usually how I know I'm projecting. I turned my head to the right, toward the far corner of the room, and I saw 2 figures standing there. One looked like my grandma. The other looked like my aunt Marisol. At first, my heart did that thing where it lifts, because you want it to be real. Even though they weren't totally clear, I heard Marisol's voice so plainly, like she was right there with me, saying, "Come on, come give your grandma a hug. She's been missing you." And without thinking too hard, I sat up, like I just got pulled by the invitation, and I started walking toward them. But the closer I got, the clearer they became, and the more wrong it felt. Because the woman that looked like my grandma didn't look like her anymore. Her eyes were too dark. Not like shadow makeup dark, like there was depth in them that didn't belong. Her face looked thinner, almost dried out, and there was this weight around her, this thick atmosphere that pressed into my chest. And it wasn't like a cartoon evil feeling. It felt like grief, like abandonment, like a loneliness so deep it had teeth. And that's what freaked me out the most, because my grandma was never like that. Even when she was sick, even near the end, she was still teasing people, still smiling, still finding some way to make the room lighter. This thing in front of me felt like the opposite of her spirit. So I stopped a few feet away, and I just knew, that sharp, clear knowing, that this was not my grandma. But here's the thing. I still felt so much sorrow coming off of her that it made my eyes sting. It was overwhelming, like standing too close to someone crying, except it wasn't sound, it was energy. And I thought, maybe it's confused. Maybe it's hurt. Maybe it's pretending because it doesn't know another way to reach someone. So I decided to hug her anyway. Not because I believed her, but because I couldn't stand the way that loneliness felt, like something that had been starving for a very long time. When I stepped forward and wrapped my arms around her, she was colder than she should have been. Not icy exactly, just wrong. Like hugging something that didn't belong in a living room. And I leaned in and whispered into her ear as gently as I could, "I know you're not my grandma, but I'm hugging you anyway. I think you need it." And the second I said that, the second, everything flipped. She jerked back and her face twisted, and she started wailing like I'd stabbed her with words. Full-on screaming, sobbing, this raw, furious sound. "I am your grandma! How dare you say I'm not your grandma?" And then she grabbed me. And then, out of nowhere, a bright white light started flashing around us. Not like a gentle glow, like strobe flashes. Fast, sharp, filling the room. The grandma stopped mid-scream and snapped her head around, terrified. And Marisol did too. Both of them suddenly scanning the room like animals hearing a predator. They looked scared, like they'd been caught. And right as that fear hit their faces, I slammed back into my body. I was suddenly fully awake on the couch, heart pounding, breath shallow, mouth dry. The TV was still on. The living room was normal again. But the corner, the exact corner where I'd seen them standing, where my LED strip lights are plugged in, those lights were flashing bright white. Violently. Rapid flashes, like the room was taking pictures. And here's the part that messed with me. I didn't even have the LEDs set to white. They'd been on deep blue earlier. They were never on white. I grabbed the remote immediately, panicked, and kept hitting buttons. Off, brightness, mode, anything. And nothing worked. The lights kept flashing like they were ignoring me completely. So I unplugged them. The second I did, the flashing stopped. I stood there for a moment, just staring, hands shaking. Then I plugged them back in, and the LED strip didn't turn on at all, like it was dead, like it had burned out in that moment. And it never worked again after that. I told my friend about it the next day, and he just stared at me and went, "Nope, that is straight up poltergeist stuff." Which did not help, obviously. But what really got me is this. I've had projection experiences before. Weird ones, intense ones, but never anything that felt like it bled into the physical world. And I keep replaying it, trying to make it make sense. Why did that thing react like that when I calmly called it out? Why did the white flashing start right when they looked scared? And why, out of everything in my living room, did the lights in that corner start flashing white like some kind of warning? And then die? I don't know. All I know is, I woke up to the same white flashing light I saw in that moment, and it felt like something stepped in, something pushed them out, and for a split second, my actual reality, and whatever that was, overlapped. And I swear, even now, when I look at that corner of the room, it feels different, like it remembers. So, I've always hesitated to talk about this because my dreams don't feel like the kind of spooky dreams most people mean when they say that. Mine are specific. And what really shook me is realizing that other people I've never met, describe the same kind of figure I've seen. A tall silhouette, a long coat, a wide-brimmed hat. And I know how that sounds. Trust me, I do. But I've seen him more than once, and both times the dreams had this shared DNA, like they were chapters of the same story. Okay, first one. In the dream, I'm with my family and a few friends, and we're having this little backyard get-together. Not fancy, just food, laughter, someone's music playing too loud. It's warm out, late afternoon, the kind of light that makes everything look almost golden. Our yard feels bigger than it is in real life, like it stretches further, like the dream is giving it extra space. And right in the middle of it all is this fence. Not on the edge of the property, no. It's built straight through the yard, cutting everything in two, like someone decided half the world didn't need to be seen. It's tall, made of old boards, and it shouldn't be there. But everyone else is acting like it's normal. They're chatting, passing plates around, totally fine. And I'm trying to be fine too, but I get this sick, rolling feeling in my stomach. Like the fence is wrong. Like it's hiding something that's been waiting. So I walk over to it. I put my hands on the boards. They feel rough and dry and a little loose, like they've been sunbaked for years. I look for a gap, but there isn't one. No knothole, no missing plank. Nothing. And that makes it worse. I climb. I hook my foot on one of the cross slats and haul myself up, and as I swing a leg over, one of the boards cracks with this sharp, splintering snap. The sound is way too loud, like it echoes. And suddenly, I'm sitting on top of the fence, balanced there, staring down at the other side. And the whole mood flips. The ground over there is covered in insects, thousands of them, like a living carpet. Not just ants, not just beetles, everything. Legs and wings and glossy backs, crawling over each other in a constant, restless tide. And the light changes. The sunny sky I was just under. It's still above me, but on that side it's like a storm moved in instantly. Thick gray clouds, heavy and low. The colors drain out of everything until it's all cold, muted, almost colorless. Then the bugs start pouring through the crack I made. They spill through the broken board in a fast, urgent stream, like water finding a hole in a dam. And that's when I see him. He comes into view at the far end of the yard, rounding the side of the house like he's been walking there the whole time. He's tall, taller than anyone should be in a dream. Broad shoulders, long dark coat that hangs straight down, and that hat. Wide brim, the kind that hides his face completely, so all you get is shadow where a person's features should be. He's not running, he's not hurrying, he's just coming. Step by slow step, directly toward me. I scramble down from the fence so fast I nearly fall, and I sprint back to my family, shouting that we have to go, that something's wrong, that we have to move, now. And the terrifying part is, they actually listen. Like they can feel it too, finally. And then, there he is again, crossing the yard. The bugs are everywhere now, spreading, swallowing the grass. He moves through it without reacting, like none of it matters. Like it's part of him. Like it belongs. I can't see his face, only the hat's shadow, only that dark, impossible outline. And then I hear the front door of the guest house open. Not slammed, not forced. Opened, calmly, like he has every right. And right as the sound registers, right as my body tenses for whatever comes next, I wake up. But I don't wake up relieved. I wake up like I've escaped by inches. Now, the second dream, it's different on the surface, but it's the same feeling underneath. The same pressure in the air, like the world is holding its breath. I'm on the edge of a fjord, the kind you see in photos. Steep rock walls, dark water, everything dramatic and sharp. It's raining, not a gentle rain, but stinging sideways rain. wind ripping at my clothes. The sea is violent, whitecaps smashing into jagged stones. To my left, a rocky slope climbs upward, scattered with moss and a few stubborn trees. To my right, the water stretches out, and across it a massive cliff rises straight up, like a wall built to keep something in. And there's a road running along the shoreline, slick with rain. I'm running on it. I don't even remember deciding to run. I just am. My lungs burn. My feet slap the wet ground. And when I glance left, I see movement on the hillside. Shapes. A pack of animals, 10 or so, big bodies, heavy shoulders. Not exactly wolves, not exactly bears, but something with that same power. They're keeping pace up there, matching me, and the moment I notice them, they start charging down the slope. And the fear that hits me is pure and instant, like my body understands before my mind does. Then, right ahead on the right, there's this church. It's Gothic, all sharp angles and towering stone, but it's unreal in scale. The spire rises so high it disappears into the gray clouds, and the building itself looks like it's grown out of the sea. Waves crash against its foundation. Tall, pointed windows stare out over the water like dark eyes. And the only way in is from the shore. I don't think. I just run straight for the entrance and push inside. The second the door closes behind me, everything changes. The storm sound dulls, like the world has been wrapped in thick fabric. The air is cold and still. No candles, no lamps, no warmth. Just that weak, ashy daylight filtering through the high windows, washing the white walls in a kind of sickly calm. The ceiling is impossibly high, so high it makes me feel tiny and exposed. Empty pews line both sides of the aisle, perfectly neat, perfectly untouched, like no one has sat there in centuries. And at first, I'm relieved, because the animals aren't in here. The chasing stops at the threshold. But then I look toward the altar, and I see him. He's standing near the front, off to one side by the last pew, like he's been waiting. Hat, long coat, that same dark shape swallowing the light around it. His back is to me, and for a second I just freeze, because my brain is trying to pretend it isn't real. But it is. I feel it in my skin. He moves. Not suddenly, not sharply, just turns, like a slow hinge. He pivots to the right, then again, lining himself up with the aisle, and he begins walking down the center toward me. Steady, measured, like he's practiced this. To my side, there's a dark wooden door, the kind that leads to a tower staircase. I bolt for it, pull it open, and I'm taking the steps 2 at a time, spiraling upward. The staircase is narrow and old, the wood creaking under my feet, and I keep climbing until I can't climb anymore. I end up in a tiny room at the very top, tucked under the peak of the spire. The ceiling angles inward so sharply it feels like the room is closing around me. There's a small window, and through it I can see the ground far below. Outside, the animals are there. They're pacing and snarling in the rain, circling the church like they're trapped by some invisible boundary, like they're furious they can't follow. I slam the door shut, and for a moment I just stand there, shaking, staring at the handle like it's the only thing holding my world together. Then I hear it. Footsteps. Deep, muffled, slow. Not on stone, on wood. A steady thump, 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 like a clock, like a heartbeat that isn't mine. It reverberates through the walls as it climbs the tower, each step closer tightening my chest. The sound gets louder, closer. Then it stops. Silence for half a breath, just enough to make me hope, stupidly, that maybe he turned around. And then there's a softer sound right outside the door, like shoes settling on the floorboards, like someone taking their time. I stare at the handle so hard my eyes ache. The handle moves. It presses down, slowly, like there's no rush at all. And right before it opens, I wake up. So I live alone. Just me, my dog Milo, and my cat Juniper, in this little upstairs apartment that always has some kind of background noise. Pipes ticking, a neighbor's door shutting, the heater doing its dramatic on and off routine. You know how it is. And my pets. They're like most animals. Every now and then they'll stare into a corner or track something with their eyes like they're watching an invisible tennis match. I've always told myself it's probably just sounds I can't hear, or vibrations in the building. I'm not exactly the "it's a ghost" type. Anyway, this happened a few nights ago. I made myself dinner, carried the plate over to the couch, and flopped down to eat while watching some random show. I've got this big L-shaped sectional. I sit on the part pressed against the wall, and the other section sticks out toward the kitchen without touching anything, so it makes this little walkway behind it to the rest of the apartment. Milo was already bundled up on the couch, completely wrapped in a blanket like he pays rent. Juniper was in the kitchen finishing her food. A couple minutes pass, and right on cue, Juniper starts her usual routine for attention. She does this thing where she stands at the back base of the couch, where I can't see her, and scratches the leather a few times like she's knocking on a door. Then she jumps up, acts offended I didn't roll out a red carpet, and demands pets. So I hear the familiar scratch, 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 and then this impatient little chirpy meow, like, "Hello, I'm here." I smile, I lift my hand, ready to give her the royal treatment, and I hear it again. The exact same scratching sound. Same texture, same rhythm, same place. But here's the thing. Juniper was already in front of me, like right there, eyes bright, paws tucked in, claws not even out, waiting for me to scratch her cheeks. Milo's head pops up from the blanket immediately, and Juniper freezes mid-demand. Both of them turn their heads toward the back of the couch at the same time, staring straight at the spot where that sound just came from. And they didn't freak out. No puffed up tail, no barking, no bolting away like something just hissed at them from the shadows. Just alert, curious. Like they were both thinking, "Wait, that wasn't you?" And honestly, that calm reaction was the only reason I stayed calm too. Because if they'd been scared, I would have been scared. But they weren't. So I just sat there with my fork halfway to my mouth, staring at the couch like it owed me an explanation. I'm used to apartment noises. I can rationalize most things. But this wasn't vague creaking or a distant bump. This was cat claws on leather. That specific, dry little rasping scratch that you can't really confuse with anything else. And I could pinpoint exactly where it came from. Right behind the sectional, in that hidden spot Juniper always uses as her "excuse me, I require affection" launch pad. I sat there for a while just thinking, trying to recreate it in my head, trying to explain it. Maybe the leather settled. Maybe something brushed against it. Maybe sound bounced weirdly down the hallway. But it was so perfect. Like someone, or something, had just copied Juniper's signature move. And before you ask, no, I didn't feel dread. No cold rush. No sense of being watched. Just pure confusion. Like my brain kept trying to file it away into a normal category and failing. Still, every once in a while, I'll be sitting on that couch and my eyes will drift to the back corner where that sound came from. And I'll catch Juniper staring there too, like she's waiting for the couch to do it again. Okay, so let me tell you something that's been sitting with me ever since I heard it, because it genuinely rattled me in a way I didn't expect. A friend of mine, Nabil, was the one who told me this first story. It happened in Morocco, in the small town where his dad grew up. His dad was about 7 years old when it happened. And now he's, I don't know, in his early 50s or so. But the way Nabil described it, you could tell this wasn't just some random tale people repeat for fun. This was one of those town stories that becomes part of the place. So when Nabil's dad was a kid, he used to play outside with this little girl named Salma. She was a couple years younger than him, and their families knew each other well. Neighbors, basically. Normal childhood stuff. Then one day, Salma had an accident. She fell into a deep hole in the ground. Like, not a little ditch, a real hole. And she got badly hurt. Depending on who tells it, it was her leg, or her arm. But either way, she couldn't just go home right away. So for a few days, she stayed with Nabil's dad's family while she recovered, and while the adults figured out what to do next. And that's when the strange part starts. The very first night she's there, they hear this sharp clattering on the roof, like something small but hard hitting the tiles. At first they think it's an animal or kids messing around, so the adults go up to check. Nothing. No one. No footprints, no kids hiding, no birds perched up there. Just a few small stones on the roof, like they'd been dropped from above. Except there wasn't any above. It's a roof. And then it happens again. And again. For 3 days straight. Not non-stop, but enough that everyone in the house starts watching for it. They try to catch it in the act. They check the street. They check neighboring roofs. They accuse kids. They blame birds. They even suspect someone's playing a sick joke on an injured girl. But nobody ever sees a hand throwing anything. Nobody catches anyone running away. The stones are only ever seen mid-fall or after they land. And here's the detail that makes my skin go cold even saying it. The moment Salma finally leaves to go back home, it stops. Just stops. Like a switch flips. Of course the town talks. At first it's just whispers. Did you hear what happened at the Bouzid house? But pretty soon everybody knows. And the rumor becomes this. When Salma is around, stones fall. People start testing it too, because that's what people do. They watch her pass by. They wait. They listen. Some are curious. Some are cruel about it. But no one can explain it. No one finds a culprit. Eventually, someone connects it back to the hole she fell into. Like, what if it wasn't just an accident? So men from the town go to the place. They climb down or lean in with lanterns, something like that. And what they find makes the story take a darker turn. Candle wax, pooled and hardened in places, and strange red writing on the walls. Not like a kid scribbling, like someone actually meant it. After that, they fill the hole in, completely, like they're trying to bury whatever it was. And Salma, this part is told kind of carefully, like people still don't like saying it out loud. They call in an imam, not just to pray, but to perform a kind of spiritual cleansing, an exorcism basically, even if the word sounds different in an Islamic context. Nabil told me the village went quiet for a full week. Schools closed. Shops didn't open. Parents kept kids inside. Like everyone collectively decided, we are not going to tempt this. And then, it stops. No more stones. No more roof clattering. No more little rocks appearing out of nowhere around her.
So that alone is creepy, right?
But here's where it gets worse, because it didn't just stay as a story. A few days after he told me, I borrowed a book from Nabil's room. It was one of those old, slightly yellowed books that look like they've been passed through hands for decades. He said the whole bookshelf originally belonged to his great-uncle, so it had this dusty, family relic vibe. The book was in French, published in 1972. and it was about paranormal cases and theories. The title was Les Mystères du Surnaturel, and it was written by someone named Robert Tokay. I wasn't even reading it because I fully believed anything. I was just curious, like, okay, if weird stuff happens, what kind of weird stuff has been recorded? And then I hit this one story. It's set in France, in a town near the coast, Arcachon, and there's a sanatorium there, the kind they used to have for tuberculosis patients. Long corridors, quiet rooms, that whole image. In this place, there's an older woman staying in one of the rooms, and the staff and patients start noticing something. Wherever she goes, little stones start falling nearby. Not crushing boulders, small rocks you could hold in your palm, but enough that it freaks people out. Then she leaves. A new patient moves into her room, a girl, around 17, and the same thing starts happening again. Same pattern. Stones appearing out of nowhere, falling around people, never quite hitting anyone. At first, everyone tries to explain it away. Drafts, loose gravel, someone playing tricks, but they can't find anything. They can't catch anyone. There's no source. And the most unsettling part is that the rocks aren't found stacked somewhere. They're only noticed as they fall. One day, when patients and workers are outside enjoying the sun, the stones start raining down again, right as that teenage girl comes out to join them. Like the air around her is the trigger. And then the exact same thing happens as in the Morocco story. When she eventually leaves the sanatorium, the phenomenon stops. So now I'm sitting there with this book open, and I'm realizing I've heard two stories. Different countries, different decades, totally unrelated people, and yet the details line up way too neatly. And these are the specific details that got under my skin. The stones only fell when the girl was nearby. The stones were never seen being thrown, only falling. They didn't really hurt anyone, almost like they were aimed to miss. And both stories were tied to a location, the hole in Morocco, the room in France. It sounds small when I list it like that. It almost sounds simple, but that's exactly what made it terrifying to me, because it wasn't chaotic, it wasn't random, it had rules. And when something like that has rules, something that shouldn't exist, behaving like it has a pattern, you start feeling like you're not just hearing a scary story anymore. You start feeling like you're brushing up against something that might actually be real. Okay, so I should probably give you a little background first, because none of this makes sense without it. My girlfriend, I'll call her Maya, she's had a rough start in life. Like the kind of childhood where the air in the house is always... Her parents split when she was young, and the fighting didn't really end after the divorce. If anything, it got uglier. Her dad would pull these manipulative moves that made Maya and her older sister feel like they had to compete for love, like he was trying to turn them against each other. And I swear, that kind of thing leaves marks on you, even when you're grown. And Maya, she carries stress differently than most people. She gets panic attacks sometimes, like the real kind, where your body feels like it's in danger even when you're safe. But what makes her situation different is what happens with the panic attacks. Ever since she was a kid, she's seen things. Not like little flickers in your vision. I mean full-on shadow figures. She described one that wears a brimmed hat, like this old-school silhouette that just stands there. There was another one she called the long-armed one, because it would be wedged in the corner of her room like it didn't belong in the geometry of the space. And then there was this woman-shaped presence that would peek out from her closet door, just barely enough for Maya to catch it if she glanced the wrong way. Sometimes it's not even a full body, it's just faces, like oval heads, big round eyes, a little open mouth, like a mask that doesn't belong to anyone. Once in a while she can sort of make out features, but most of the time it's just the idea of a face, like something trying to imitate what a human looks like. And here's the part that messed me up. When Maya gets really anxious, the shadows don't just stand there. She's told me they move. Sometimes they crawl. Sometimes it feels like they're coming closer. And she'll grab her stomach or her side and tell me it hurts, like pressure, like bruising from the inside. She's not saying, "I imagined pain." She's saying, "It hurts right now." I know how that sounds. I do. If someone else told me this a couple years ago, I'd probably nod politely and think, sleep paralysis, trauma, hallucinations, anxiety, all of that. And to be clear, I still think some of that could be part of it. But then, there was this one morning that didn't fit neatly into any box. Maya had a really bad night, panic attack, shadows, the whole thing. She finally fell asleep near morning. And the next day she texted me like, "I don't want to scare you, but look at this." And she sent a photo of her thigh. There were scratches. Not random. Not like, "Oh, I must have hit something." It looked like a symbol, like a messy star shape carved into the skin, with lines that were too deliberate to be accidental. And that was the moment I remember thinking, okay, either something is happening that I don't understand, or her mind and body are doing something terrifyingly real together. Either way, it wasn't something I could shrug off anymore. Now, here's my part in the story. I'm a Christian. Not casually, not just in name. I mean, I really believe it. And I've had my own weird experiences too. Not seeing figures the way Maya does, but feeling presences. Getting sleep paralysis. That trapped feeling where you can't move and you're convinced something is in the room with you. At first, it scared me. Like full-body dread. But then it started happening enough that my fear kind of burned out. It turned into irritation, then anger. Like, not again? Seriously? And I don't know how to explain this without sounding dramatic, but I started fighting it back in the only way I knew how. I'd pray. I'd say the name of Jesus out loud, or in my head if I couldn't move, and tell whatever it was to leave. So when Maya and I started dating, I didn't want to push my beliefs on her, because she's not religious like that. She's more open to ghosts, spirits, that kind of thing. But I did start doing one thing. I prayed for her at night. Every night. And what's wild is, over time she started seeing them less. Not completely at first, but noticeably less. And I kept wondering, is it because she's happier? Because she's less stressed? Because she finally feels safe with someone? Or is it something spiritual? I don't know. I honestly don't. It could be either, maybe both. But we learned something else too. If Maya talks about the shadows too much, or even thinks about them too long, it's like her brain turns the lights on for them. She'll remember, and suddenly she'll freeze mid-sentence and go, "I just saw one." So we developed this rule without even saying it out loud. We don't talk about them, because talking about them invites them back, whether that's psychologically or spiritually, or both. And then tonight, we broke the rule. We were on a video call, just being lazy. We ended up watching a horror movie, one of those newer, creepy ones. And I did that stupid curiosity thing where I was like, "Are any scenes like what you've experienced?" And she paused, and she was like, "Yeah, actually." And once it started, it didn't stop. The conversation just spiraled. She told me more details. She even drew them, like little sketches on paper, showing the tall corner figure and the face shapes. And as she was drawing, she kept doing that thing where her eyes would dart to the side of her room, like she was trying not to look directly at something. At one point she laughed, but it was the kind of laugh people do when they're trying to prove they're okay. Then she got quiet and said, "There's one by the corner of my bed." And I could feel my stomach drop even though I couldn't see anything through the camera. Like the atmosphere changed just from her saying it. And I didn't want to feed it. I didn't want to turn this into a serious, fear-filled moment where she spirals. So I did something kind of dumb, but also kind of perfect. I was changing my shirt, and I said, totally, "Oh, does it want to watch me change too?" Maya blinked, and then she snorted, like really laughed. And she turned her phone toward the corner like she was introducing a friend and goes, "Just hanging out with my bestie." And I swear to you, the fear on her face loosened, like her shoulders dropped, like the room could breathe again. And she didn't say she saw it anymore after that. That moment made something click for me, because I've always believed fear is part of the fuel, whether these things are paranormal or whether they're manifestations of trauma and anxiety. Fear is what gives them weight. Fear makes them bigger. Fear makes them realer. So I started thinking, okay, how do I help her long term? Do we just never mention them again, because even talking about it triggers it? Or do I help her understand my faith, not as a lecture, but as a way of feeling protected, like truly protected? Or do we train her to meet them with annoyance instead of terror? Like, "Oh great, you again," instead of, "Oh my God, I'm in danger." Because I'll tell you this, part of why I'm not afraid anymore is because I genuinely believe God is with me. That doesn't mean I'm some superhero. It just means I don't feel alone. And if I'm not alone, then what is some shadow in the corner compared to that? It's like the way an adult doesn't feel threatened by a toddler throwing a tantrum. Loud, dramatic, scary looking for a second, but not actually in control. And when she finally drifted off, she looked peaceful, like genuinely peaceful. She's asleep right now as I'm telling you this, and I'm still here on the call, watching her breathe, hoping that tonight stays quiet. And I don't know what the shadows are. I can't tell you that. I just know what they've done to her, what they've tried to take from her, and how badly I want them gone. So yeah, that's where I'm at. Trying to protect her, trying to make her feel safe, trying to figure out whether the answer is silence, faith, laughter, or some mix of all three. But tonight I'll take the small win, because she's asleep, and the room feels calm. Hey, so I want to tell you something that still feels hard to say out loud, but I think I need to say it the way it actually happened to me. A while back, I ended up in the hospital after a suicide attempt. It got serious enough that they had to intubate me, something like 10 hours, maybe a little more, before I finally came back around. When I woke up, everything felt muffled, like my brain was wrapped in cotton. And not long after that, I was involuntarily committed. I'm telling you that part first because I don't want you to think I'm glossing over the mental health side of this. I live with another condition too, the kind that can tip me into psychosis, especially depending on meds and stress. So yeah, that's part of the picture. But I also don't want it used as an excuse to dismiss what this felt like. When they moved me to the psych ward, the place was exactly what you'd imagine. Fluorescent lighting, slow footsteps in the hall, that weird mix of boredom and tension hanging in the air. And there was this person there. Her name was Celine. She called herself a witch, openly, casually, like it was the same as saying she liked hiking. She had this really obvious tattoo, like a pentagram or maybe a star in a circle, right where you couldn't miss it. What stood out was that she'd gotten furious at someone one day, not me, and I heard her talking about doing a spell. She never said who it was for, and the thing is, she was genuinely kind to me, like unexpectedly kind. So I assumed naturally that whatever she was talking about, it wasn't aimed at me. But then one night, I fell asleep and had this dream that felt different from the usual hospital dreams. In it, I kept seeing these calendar pages, like paper cutouts floating against this black background. And the dates on them weren't normal dates. They were years, way out there. Like decades into the future. It was eerie because it felt like my mind was being shown something I wasn't meant to see. And then I went lucid. I remember that moment so clearly, like I woke up inside the dream and thought, wait, this isn't right. That's when I heard it. This laugh. That classic, exaggerated, movie witch kind of laugh. Hysterical, sharp, like it was echoing in a big, empty room. I couldn't see anyone, but it felt aimed, like something knew I was listening. That was the only truly weird thing that happened in the ward. Everything else, honestly, came after I got home. At home, I tried to brush it off. I kept telling myself, that was stress, that was medication, that was the ward. But I couldn't shake this creeping thought. What if Celine did something? What if I was wrong about not being her target? I'm agnostic. I used to be a pretty firm atheist. But after all this, it's like my certainty got cracked. Not replaced with faith exactly, just cracked open by fear and confusion. The first thing that ramped up was my sleep paralysis. I've had it since I was a kid, on and off, and it can get worse on antipsychotics. But this time, it spiked, like someone turned a dial. Nights started to feel like something I had to survive. And then there was this one night. I woke up, except I didn't fully wake up. You know that feeling where your eyes are open, but your body refuses to cooperate? I was stuck. And in front of me, standing near the bed, was this figure glowing this deep blue, somewhere between light blue and dark ocean blue. And it looked exactly like Celine. Same face, same posture, same everything. I know how this sounds. I do. But in that moment, with my body locked and my eyes wide open, it felt real in my bones. When I finally snapped out of it, I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, shaking. And that was the moment something shifted in me. Not into certainty, more like into, okay, maybe reality has more layers than I thought. Then, my dog got sick. His name was Milo. He was older, so seizures weren't completely out of the question. The logical part of me knows that. But the timing and the way things felt around it made me spiral. Right before we took him to the vet for the last time, Milo looked straight at me, and he winked. A full, deliberate wink. I froze, because he had never, not once, done that before. And my brain went wild with questions. Was it him trying to comfort me? Was it just some weird muscle thing? Or was it something else wearing his face for a second? The wink felt oddly gentle and deeply unsettling at the same time, like being comforted by someone standing in the dark. After he was gone, I kept hearing him bark for weeks, like a month, maybe longer. I'd be in the kitchen and swear I heard him from the hallway. I'd wake up at night and think, there, that's Milo. And then I'd remember. And then, one day, I opened TikTok, just mindlessly scrolling, and a tarot reading popped up. The person on the video suddenly said my dog's name, Milo. And then they said, in this sad, emotional voice, Milo is crossing the Rainbow Bridge today. And the location on the video, this is the part that made my stomach drop, was tied to a place I used to live. Coincidence? Algorithms? The internet being weird? Maybe. But it hit me like the universe had reached through my phone and grabbed me by the collar. After that, mirrors started feeling wrong. Sometimes I'd catch something out of the corner of my eye, my face, but not quite, or a shift in expression that didn't match what I was doing. Sometimes it was comforting, like someone was close by. Sometimes it was terrifying, like I was sharing my reflection with something I didn't invite. And here's where I'm at now. Part of me wants to explain everything with sleep paralysis, grief, stress, meds, trauma. And another part of me, The part that still remembers that laugh in the dream, that blue figure with the book, that impossible wink, keeps asking, but what if there's more? So what do I do with this? How do I live in a world where I don't fully trust my own nights, my own mirrors, my own brain? Honestly, I think the safest thing I can do is stay grounded. Talk to my doctor about the sleep paralysis getting worse. Tell someone I trust when things feel scary. And keep reminding myself that feeling something intensely doesn't always mean it's supernatural. Sometimes it means I'm healing from something enormous. And if you're still listening, thank you. I just needed someone to hear it without laughing me off. So, I've carried this around for a long time, and I don't tell it often, because even now, it sounds like something I must have imagined. When I was 9, we lived in this mid-sized city where everybody kind of knew everybody, at least through parents, neighbors, that sort of thing. There was a boy a few streets over named Eli, and he was around 13. We weren't close. We'd nodded at each other, maybe traded a couple words outside our buildings, but he was older, doing older kid things. I wouldn't have called him my friend. One afternoon, he was riding his bike home and a drunk driver hit him. It happened fast. So fast, people said he didn't even have time to react. He died right there on the road. I remember feeling weird. Not cold exactly, just distant. Like it was sad in a way I understood with my head more than my heart. I went to school. I played. Life stayed normal. And then, almost exactly a month after the funeral, I opened my closet and found something that made my stomach drop. A stuffed toy. A little teddy cat thing, soft, worn, the kind of toy you can tell a kid loved with their whole life. I recognized it immediately because I'd seen it at the funeral. I remembered it being placed on his grave. I remembered the dirt, the flowers, everything. And there it was, on my closet floor, like it had always belonged there. I ran to my parents with it, shaking, trying to explain. They exchanged that look adults do when they think a kid is confused, but don't want to say it outright. Still, they took it seriously enough to bring it to Eli's mom. They told her we must have accidentally taken it home somehow, maybe in the chaos after the service. She cried. I remember that part. She held the toy like it was a piece of him. A week later, I opened my closet again. The teddy cat was back. Same scuffed ear, same little stitched smile, same exact toy. That time, I didn't tell my parents. I don't even know why. Part of me just didn't want anyone else involved. Like if I said it out loud, it would become real. After that, the house started sounding different. At first it was little things, soft tapping in the hallway, a faint shuffle like someone walking in socks. I told myself it was our cat, because that's what makes sense when you're 9. Cats knock things over. Cats run at night. Cats do weird stuff. But the toy started moving. I'd put it in the closet before bed, very deliberately. I'd close the door and even wedge a shoe against it, like that mattered. In the morning, I'd wake up and it would be on my pillow, or tucked into the bend of my arm, like I'd been sleeping with it for hours. And I know what you're thinking. Maybe I was sleepwalking. Maybe my parents were trying to comfort me without admitting it. I thought of those things too. But it didn't feel comforting. It felt insistent. Then the dreams started. At first, they were almost ordinary nightmares. Dark streets, headlights, the screech of tires. But soon Eli was in them. Always Eli. Pale and wet-eyed, like he was stuck halfway between crying and trying not to. In the dreams, he would point at the teddy cat and tell me over and over, "Don't be mean to him." Like the toy had feelings, like it could be hurt. He called it pickles, which sounds ridiculous now, but in the dream it felt deadly serious. He would make me promise to keep pickles close, not to give it away, not to leave it anywhere, not to let anyone take it from me. And then he'd say something that made my chest ache even in sleep. He'd whisper, almost like he was ashamed to ask. I started dreading bedtime. I'd lie there staring at the ceiling, bargaining with myself. If I don't fall asleep, I can't dream. My insomnia started there, I'm pretty sure. My parents just thought I was going through a phase, or anxious about school, or staying up too late. I didn't know how to explain that I was scared of closing my eyes because someone was waiting for me on the other side. Eventually, time did what time does. When I turned 10, things faded a little. The toy still showed up sometimes, but I stopped checking the closet every hour. The hallway noises became background. The dreams thinned out. I started to think, maybe it was over. Maybe I'd finally grown out of it. And then it came back. Hard. But the dreams changed. Eli stopped asking me to pass messages. He didn't talk about his mom anymore. Instead, he showed up crying. Really crying like he was breaking apart. And he'd say I'd failed him. "You didn't do it," he'd sob. "You didn't do what I asked." And then the crying would snap into rage. He'd start yelling at me, calling me selfish, calling me a liar. I'd wake up to sharp noises at the window, like someone scraping a fingernail along the glass, or a pebble hitting it from outside. And after that, I couldn't sleep again. Not really. I'd sit up in bed listening, waiting for the next sound, my heart thudding like it was trying to escape. About a week into this, the teddy cat disappeared. Gone. Not in the closet, not under the bed, not in the laundry, not anywhere. I actually felt relief at first, this shaky, guilty relief, like a weight had lifted. That same day, in the afternoon, I got hit with this sudden, heavy sleepiness. It wasn't normal tired. It was like someone pressed a button in my body and I just collapsed into bed. And I dreamed. In the dream, I was running down our street, and behind me I could hear a bike chain rattling, tires skidding, someone breathing too hard. I looked back and it was Eli, chasing me, his face twisted, furious and hurt at the same time. He was shouting, "You're a bad friend. You should have died instead of me." Not could've, not maybe. He said it like it was a fact, like it was a correction the universe was supposed to make. I jolted awake, crying, and my parents tried to calm me down the way parents do, stroking my hair, saying it was just a dream, saying it would pass. But it didn't. Even now, years later, I still catch things out of the corner of my eye. A shadow shaped like a kid on a bike. A figure standing too close to the curb. Sometimes I'll turn my head and there's nothing there, but my body reacts like it saw something real. And here's the part that makes me feel stupid saying it out loud. Since all of that started, I've almost been hit by a car more times than I can count. Not once or twice, more like a dozen. Enough that it stopped feeling like coincidence and started feeling like, I don't know, like being followed by bad luck. Like the street is always just a little too hungry for me. I don't know what happened. I don't know why that toy kept coming back, or why the dreams felt so specific, so personal. Like, Happy New Year to all our amazing Paranormal M viewers. Can you believe it's already 2026? Wishing you a year where all your hopes and dreams come true. Thank you so much for all the love and support. You truly mean the world to us. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss any new videos. Alright, let's kick off the new year and dive into our next mysterious adventure together. So, this happened a long time ago, back when I was about 15, maybe 16. I can still feel the heat of that summer in my memory, like the air itself was sticky. Me and my buddy, his name was Rico back then, used to roam the neighborhood pushing this beat-up mower like we owned the place. We'd knock on doors, offer to cut lawns for cash, and honestly, It worked. Most kids were begging their parents for movie money. We were out there hustling for it. I used to go solo at first, but after a couple situations that made my stomach turn, getting chased off once, and another time a guy trying way too hard to get me to step inside his house, I decided I wasn't doing that alone anymore. Rico was about a year older than me, a little bigger, louder voice, the kind of presence that makes people behave. Plus, I'd split the money with him if he helped. Fair deal. We usually charged $10 for a full yard, front and back, and if you hit even 2 or 3 houses, you felt rich. That meant weekends were covered. Arcade tokens, cheap burgers, maybe a matinee if we were lucky. It wasn't glamorous, but it was freedom. Finding yards wasn't always easy, though. We got strategic. We'd look for older folks first, usually the safest, and honestly the kindest. You could spot them by the way the house looked cared for, or the car out front, like an old Buick with a handicap tag hanging from the mirror. And the older people? They'd tip. Or they'd hand you a cold drink like you'd just survived a war. Sometimes they'd send you home with a cookie wrapped in a napkin and a story about back in my day, when somehow every hill was steeper and every winter storm hit hardest on school mornings. You know how it goes. Anyway, one afternoon, midsummer, late June or early July, we're walking and we see this house. And I mean, this house. The grass wasn't just tall, it was wild, like it had swallowed the yard whole. The bushes were crawling up the porch like they were trying to get inside. The whole place had this abandoned vibe, quiet in a way that didn't feel peaceful, more like the kind of quiet that makes your skin listen. Rico slowed down and goes, "Man, I don't know." And I'm acting tough, of course. I'm like, "That yard is a gold mine." I flash him 3 fingers and whisper, 30, like I'm negotiating with the universe. He hesitates, but he goes up anyway. I'm hanging back, leaning on the mower handle, trying to look casual. Then Rico freezes on the walkway. I'm about to laugh at him, until I see why. There's an old man sitting on the porch, tucked into the shadows like he'd been there the whole time. We didn't even notice him at first because of how overgrown everything was. Rico turns and comes back fast, eyes wide, and he whispers, "He's just sitting there. He won't say anything." And I'm annoyed, because I'm 15 and I think I know everything. I tell him, "Dude, you have to speak up. Some old folks can't hear." So I go up there with him, all swagger, like I'm about to teach a masterclass in door-to-door lawn sales. Up close, the man looks rough. Not mean, just worn down. He's wearing these old striped overalls and heavy brown shoes like he dressed up just to sit on that porch. His head is bald, his forehead is lined deep, and his hands, resting on his knee, are speckled with age spots. His nails are long and jagged, like nobody's trimmed them in a while. His whole face had this exhausted sadness to it, like life had been chewing on him. But the creepiest part wasn't the clothes or the nails. It was his eyes. They weren't focused on us. They were like pointed through us. I clear my throat and go, "Hi, sir." Nothing. So I raise my voice. "Hello, sir." Still nothing. Not even a blink. No response. No nod. No get lost. Nothing. I glance at Rico and he gives me this look like, "Please, can we leave?" So I take a step back and go, trying to stay polite. "All right then. Have a good one, sir." And that's when the old man moves. He stands up slow, like his joints don't want to cooperate. He turns his head toward Rico first, then toward me. And when he looks at me, my stomach drops. Because now I can see his eyes clearly, and they're this pale, cloudy, milky white, like glass that's been left out in the sun too long. He doesn't say a word. He just turns, walks into the house, and shuts the door behind him. Rico leans in and whispers, "What do we do?" And I, because I'm still clinging to confidence like it's a life vest, I say, "We wait. He's probably getting money." So we wait there by the mower, trying to act normal, but it's not normal. Rico keeps talking about the eyes, and I keep pretending it's fine. Like, yeah, people get cataracts, it happens. But even as I'm saying it, I don't believe myself. We start doing the math, how we'd split the 30, whether we should have asked for more. And then, pow! A sound like a gunshot cracks through the air. We don't think, we don't talk, we just bolt. We take off so fast we leave the mower sitting right there. Gas can, oil bottle, everything, like it never belonged to us. We don't stop running until we're around the corner, out of sight, hearts pounding so hard it hurts. And when we finally catch our breath, Rico goes, "How are we supposed to get the mower back without dying?" So we do the only thing we can think of. We knock on a neighbor's door. This woman answers, and when we tell her what happened, she gets this confused look and says she hasn't seen anyone at that house in forever. She thought it was empty too. She calls the police, and within minutes, like shockingly fast, cops roll up. Several cars, lights, radios going. We tell them everything. The porch, the silence, the old man, the clothes, the eyes, the gunshot. At first, they treat it like the guy just fired a warning shot to scare off kids. But even the cops can't ignore how neglected the place looks. The whole thing shifts from old man being angry to something's wrong here. A few officers go inside while we watch from the street, standing next to a neighbor's mailbox like we're invisible. They're not inside long. They come back out looking weird. Not panicked, just rattled. Like their brains are trying to relabel what they just saw. One officer walks over and goes, "You boys say this happened today?" We both nod hard. "Yes, sir." Then he asks if we went inside. We tell him no. He asks again, more serious, like he's trying to catch us in something. No, no, no. Then an unmarked car shows up. A guy in plain clothes goes in, comes back out, and walks straight toward us. He introduces himself as a detective. He asks for our story again, and we tell it again. He asks what the man was wearing again, and we tell him again. Then he says something I'll never forget. He goes, "I'm not going to arrest you if you went into that house. I just need the truth." And we're like, "We didn't." And he pauses, looks at us, and says, real quiet, "What you're telling me and what's inside doesn't match." My throat went dry. He says there is a man inside wearing the exact outfit we described, but the man had been dead for a long time, months. Me and Rico just stared at him, like our brains had stopped taking in information. I remember thinking, that's impossible. He stood up. He looked at me. He walked inside. We eventually got permission to grab our mower and leave. They didn't want us lingering. Honestly, neither did we. But we still watched the story when it aired. They said the man had died from a self-inflicted gunshot. They said there was a dog found in there too, also dead. And they said the body had been there for around half a year, decomposed so badly it was... I don't even like repeating it. It didn't feel real. It felt like something you'd hear in a horror movie and roll your eyes at. But it was real. And the part that messes with me the most is that porch moment. Because I swear to you, hand on my heart, we talked to someone sitting in that chair. We heard him shift. We watched him stand. We watched him go inside. After that, I was done. No more mowing. No more knocking on doors. No more trying to earn weekend money by walking up to strangers' houses. Between the people who yelled, the people who invited you in a little too eagerly, and then that, whatever that was, I'd had enough. Sometimes you don't need proof to know something happened. Sometimes your body remembers first. And even now, All these years later, when I smell freshly cut grass in the heat of summer, part of me still thinks about that yard, and that porch, and the man who didn't answer until it was way too late. Okay, so I've had cats in my life for as long as I can remember, like, always. And I didn't realize until I was older how much that mattered, how much it shaped the way I feel safe in the world. When I was about 7, my mom had 2 cats, Milo and Dottie, and they both died really close together. I remember being sad, mostly because she was sad, but I didn't really understand what death meant yet. I just knew something important had gone missing from our house, and nobody could bring it back. Around that time, my brothers, Evan and Cole, were absolute chaos. Just little tornadoes in sneakers. And I was the tag-along, the one trying to prove I could keep up, even when I was terrified. The 3 of us got into trouble more than once back then. Nothing glamorous, just the kind of dumb kid stuff that somehow always spirals into, how are we explaining this to an adult? There was this old place at the edge of our neighborhood, an ancient-looking colonial farmhouse, half sinking into weeds. The kind of house you know you're not supposed to go in. It was condemned, windows busted, boards on the doors, paint peeling like dead skin. And of course, my brothers and their friends decided exploring it was going to be the highlight of their day. I didn't want to go. I was scared, but I was more scared of being left behind, so I followed them anyway. Inside, it smelled like damp dirt and mothballs, like the floor had been wet for years and nobody ever opened a window. There were old belongings everywhere, dusty piles, furniture with sheets on it, little bits of someone's life just abandoned. My brothers and 2 of their friends, Ty and Mason, a pair of twins who always moved like they had one shared brain, ran straight upstairs like it was a game. I didn't. I stayed near the front, right by the doorway, kind of hovering in what I think used to be the living room. I remember staring at the staircase, just waiting for someone to come back down and tell me it was fine. And then I heard it, a loud bang from upstairs, like wood snapping or something slamming hard against the floor. Immediately, Evan shouted Cole's name, sharp, scared, and suddenly the whole air in that house changed. You know that feeling when your body knows something before your mind can explain it? My heart started pounding so hard it felt like it was in my throat. The hair on my arms lifted like I'd rubbed a balloon on my sweater. That prickly, electric feeling spread up my neck and across my shoulders. And I tried to move. I tried. But my legs didn't listen. It was like the house had decided I was staying put. And that's when I saw him. Not a person. Not really. A tall figure in this shredded trench coat and a top hat, like an old-fashioned, almost Lincoln-looking hat. But his face was wrong. Long, stretched, like someone had tried to draw a man from memory and got the proportions horrifyingly off. And his eyes, I swear to you, his eyes didn't just look dark. They looked hungry, like they were made of heat. The room felt warmer in seconds, heavy, like the air turned into something you had to push through. Then, out of nowhere, there was fire. A sudden flare from upstairs, and smoke curling down the staircase. Later, everyone argued about how it started. The twins blamed my brothers. My brothers swore they didn't do it. All I know is, panic took over. I heard feet pounding, someone yelling, bodies rushing down, and then the front door slammed as they bolted outside. And nobody realized I was still in there. I could hear Cole outside, calling my name, my real name, shouting it like he'd finally noticed. I screamed back, begging him to come in. But he didn't. Instead, something else came. I still don't know where it came from, whether it lived in that house or belonged to someone nearby, or was just, honestly, sent. A cat. This cat came flying past me like a streak, just a blur of fur and purpose cutting between me and that figure. And the moment it did, the trenchcoat man was gone. Not fading, not running, just gone, like a light switching off. And the heaviness lifted, instantly, like someone unhooked a chain from my ribs. My legs worked again. I ran. I ran out that front door so fast I don't even remember touching the steps. I hit the yard and my brothers grabbed me and we all took off down the street as sirens started wailing closer. We watched the house burn from a distance, orange flames eating it like it was paper. And the whole time, all I could think was, where is that cat? I would have taken it home. I would have tried. I was the kind of kid who always wanted to rescue things, even when we didn't have room or permission. Not long after that, we got a cat anyway. His name was Buttons, black and white tuxedo cat with this smug little face like he knew he owned the place. We had him for years. He was family. He was mine. Eventually, we moved to a different town. Buttons became an indoor-outdoor cat, mostly because he couldn't stand our big dog, an old Rottweiler mix named Diesel. And one day, Buttons got into a fight with another animal. He came home hurt, got sick, and we had to put him down. That loss hit different. I understood it by then. I felt it deep. A few weeks later, my parents went camping, and they left me home alone. I was maybe 13. It was the 90s. People did that back then without thinking too hard about it. My brothers were older, coming and going, but I was alone in the house most of the time. I was vacuuming, trying not to cry, trying not to think about Buttons. There was a mirror in our hallway that had been glued to the wall so hard my dad once tried to remove it and couldn't. I watched him smack it with a huge hammer, and it didn't even crack. It was like the thing was meant to stay. So I'm vacuuming, I glance up, and my reflection startles me. Just that quick jump you get when you catch movement unexpectedly. And then, I saw him. Not in the mirror, in the reflection of the front bay window, inside the mirror. That trench coat shape, that top hat, standing where he absolutely could not be. My whole body went cold and hot at the same time. That same heavy pressure dropped onto me, that same sense of heat and wrongness. I whipped around to look at the actual window, and Diesel, the dog, started growling. Low and mean, like he could see what I couldn't. And right then, my brother Evan pulled into the driveway. His headlights hit the front window, and the light warped the reflection. And it vanished, like it had been pulled out of the room. I've seen it a few times since then, 3 more times over the years. And here's the part that gets me. Every single time I saw it, I didn't have a cat. But when there's been a cat in my home, when I've had that warm little body curled up somewhere, watching, listening, present, I don't see it. I don't feel it. The house feels guarded. I know some cultures believe cats are protectors, like they stand at the edge of the spirit world. Like they notice what we miss, and they'll step between you and something that wants to get too close. And look, maybe it is trauma. Maybe it's something in me that got wired wrong in that burning house when I was little. But it happened to me. I felt it. I saw it. I lived it. And I've adopted 6 cats over the last couple decades. I'll keep doing it. I'll never not have a cat. Because whether it's spiritual or psychological, whether it's protection or comfort, I'm not taking that chance. Not again. So, I was maybe 7 years old, still in grade school, and I swear I ran into something that I still can't properly explain. Back then, I'd get home around 3-ish, and for about 40 minutes, I had the house completely to myself. My older brother, let's call him Eli, was a good bit older than me, so he always came home later. One afternoon, I did what I always did. I dropped my backpack by the door, wandered into the living room, and flopped onto the couch to start my homework. And right there, between the living room and the kitchen, we had this ancient wall phone. Like one of those beige, why do we still have this phones? It worked though. Somehow it always worked. I didn't have a phone of my own, obviously, and my mom had this thing where she'd hide the TV remote until chores and homework were checked. So the house was just quiet. Not cozy quiet. That thick, empty quiet where you can hear your own breathing. I'm in the middle of a math worksheet when the phone suddenly rings, and I mean it exploded into the silence. I jumped so hard my pencil flew off my lap. I remember staring at it like it had done something wrong. But I also didn't want it to keep ringing, because that felt worse somehow, like the whole house was announcing that I was alone. The phone was up high, so I dragged one of the kitchen chairs over, climbed up, and picked it up with my heart hammering like I was doing something illegal. "Hello?" I said. Nothing. Just blank. I tried again. "Hello? Hi?" Still nothing. No breathing, no static, nothing that felt human on the other end. Just this dead, empty line. After a few seconds, I hung up, and I stood there on the chair for a moment like, okay, weird. Then I climbed down and went back to my homework. And honestly, for maybe a minute, I convinced myself it was just a wrong number or some glitch. Then I heard a sound. At first, it was so faint I thought maybe it was outside, like wind against the house or a branch scraping something. But it wasn't steady like wind. It was irregular, like something trying to be quiet. I stopped writing and just listened. And after a few seconds, I realized it was coming from the kitchen. I didn't get up. I didn't even shift on the couch. I just sat there staring forward, like if I stayed perfectly still, whatever it was wouldn't know I was there. Then it changed. This is the part that still makes my stomach tighten. It became this soft, wet, whispering sound, like someone murmuring through their teeth. And then this other noise layered over it, like someone pushing air through their mouth in little bursts. The closest thing I can compare it to is that gross sound kids make when they blow spit through a straw. Except slower, closer, like it was right there in the kitchen with me. I remember my whole body going cold. I didn't feel brave. I didn't feel curious. I felt small, like the house had suddenly gotten bigger and I was the only living thing inside it. And I started doing this thing kids do when they're terrified. I got loud. I started crying, and then I started yelling, half sobs, half angry shouts, like volume could protect me. Like if I sounded big enough, whatever was in the kitchen would back off. It felt like it went on forever, but it probably wasn't. It was probably a minute, maybe two. And then, thank God, I heard the front door open. My brother Eli walked in, and I basically collapsed into relief the second I saw him. He took one look at my face and was like, "What happened?" And I spilled it out. The phone ringing, the silent line, the sounds afterward, the whispering, the weird, airy blowing noise from the kitchen. He listened, then shrugged like it was nothing and said, "You're just freaking yourself out." So when people say, "Oh, your imagination," it's like, okay, but imagination needs ingredients, and I didn't have any. All I had was a silent house, an old wall phone that rang when it shouldn't have, and sounds from the kitchen that felt way too real to be made up. And I know this sounds dramatic, but I'll tell you the truth. I've never forgotten it. Not once. Even now, all these years later, I still don't know what made those noises. I just know what I heard, and how alone I felt hearing it. So, this happened when I was around 10. Every summer back then, I'd basically move into my aunt's place for weeks at a time. Not a normal house either, more like this big, creaky summer home right by a lake, with the forest starting just beyond the backyard. The kind of place that smells like pine needles and old wood, and at night, it gets so dark it feels like the trees are leaning in closer. The day before this happened, I'd been going non-stop, running outside all day, swimming until my skin felt wrinkly, just completely burning through every ounce of energy I had. I crashed early, like embarrassingly early, and then I woke up in the middle of the night. It was around 4:07 in the morning, give or take. I remember because the glow of the clock felt weirdly bright in that dark room. My mouth was so dry, like I'd swallowed a handful of sand. I sat up and started feeling around for water. Maybe a bottle, maybe a cup, anything. Nothing. So I finally sighed and got out of bed, shuffling into the hallway. I flicked the light on, and right away my aunt's dog, his name was Jasper, came padding out like, "Oh, you're up? Cool, I'm up too." He was this sweet, sturdy dog, not scary at all, but he took his job seriously when it came to noises at night. I scratched his ears for a second, and then I started toward the stairs. Jasper followed right beside me, nails clicking on the floor. Okay, so picture the downstairs layout with me. The staircase led out into this main room. Off to the left, there was this long corridor, storage closet on one side, bathroom on the other, and the front door all the way at the far end. And off to the other side, kind of open and wide, was the kitchen, like the house was holding its breath in there. It was still really dark, but the sky had just enough faint gray in it that you could see shapes. I'm about halfway down the stairs when Jasper stops. Not fully stops, more like his whole body goes stiff. Then he starts growling, low and steady, aimed straight toward that corridor on the left. At first, I didn't even react. I was half asleep and thirsty, and I figured maybe he heard a mouse or something. But the growling got stronger, more serious. That deep, warning kind. So I turned my head. And I swear to you, there was someone standing there. But someone doesn't really describe it right. It was shaped like a person. Head, shoulders, arms, everything. But it was completely black. Not like wearing dark clothes black, like the absence of light. No face, no details, just this solid human outline where a human shouldn't have been. I froze so hard I felt like my bones locked. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. I didn't even blink on purpose because I was afraid I'd look away and it would suddenly be closer. Jasper kept growling. He didn't move toward it. He just stood his ground like he was warning it, and maybe warning me too. The shape stood there for what felt like forever, but it was probably 5 seconds. And then, it lifted its arm. I honestly can't tell you if it pointed at me or waved. It was such a surreal little motion, calm, almost casual, which somehow made it worse. Like it wasn't startled that I saw it, like it expected to be seen. Then it turned, slowly, toward the storage closet, and it went inside. Just like that. The second it disappeared, my body finally remembered how to work. I bolted back up the stairs so fast I almost slipped. Jasper came with me, still tense, still keyed up, so I just stood there, arguing with myself, trying to be brave. And then I had the dumbest, bravest idea. I'm going to check the storage room. I started back down, but this time I turned on every light I passed, every single one, like I could build a little shield out of brightness. Jasper stayed so close he was practically glued to my leg. When I got to the corridor, I moved slowly, swallowing hard, and I opened the storage door. Nothing. Just the smell of old cleaning supplies, some stacked boxes, random stuff. No person, no shape, no anything. I slammed the door and ran back upstairs again, heart banging so hard it hurt. That's when I finally woke my mom. I told her everything in this rushed, trembling mess. How Jasper growled, how it stood there, how it lifted its arm, how it went into the storage room. My mom listened, but her face had that expression adults get when they're trying to be kind, but they don't really believe you. Later, she mentioned it to my aunt, and it was exactly what you'd expect. "Oh, you were dreaming. It was a shadow. Kids imagine things. All that." And honestly, even now, part of me understands why they said that. But here's the thing that keeps me from brushing it off completely. Years later, like years, my older brother told me something. He'd been there that same summer too, but he was sleeping in a separate little guest cabin on the property, so he didn't know anything about what happened to me that night. That morning, after everyone was up and moving around, he went into the main house kitchen to grab breakfast. He told me he was sitting there eating cereal when he suddenly felt this presence next to him, this heavy, ugly feeling. And the only word he could think of was evil. Not scary, not creepy, just wrong. Then, out of nowhere, his vision went completely black. Not blurry, not dim, just pitch black, like someone flipped a switch behind his eyes. He said it lasted about 5 seconds. And then his sight came back like nothing happened. The horrible feeling vanished too. He was freaked out enough that he went to doctors afterward, just to be sure he wasn't having some kind of neurological issue. And they found nothing. Completely normal. So yeah, I still don't know what I saw on those stairs. I still don't know what happened to my brother in that kitchen. I'm not someone who goes around insisting everything is paranormal. I'm honestly kind of skeptical by nature. But Jasper growled. Jasper reacted like there was something real there. And my brother, without knowing my story, experienced something strange that same morning in the same house. So a part of me, just a small part, can't help but think it wasn't nothing. And every time I picture that hallway, I still remember how that shape lifted its arm, like it was acknowledging me, like it was saying, "Yeah, you saw me." So this happened a few years back at one of my old jobs, and I still get that little chill in my shoulders when I think about it. Back then, I'd just graduated and landed this sweet role at my college. My title was something like Robotics Lab Specialist. Basically, I spent my days working with collaborative robots, tuning their behavior, and messing with their vision systems until they behaved like they had some common sense. One project I got assigned was this autonomous rolling platform we dug out of storage. It used a depth camera, one of those older motion-sensing units from that era, plugged straight into a laptop. The setup was pretty straightforward. A normal camera view, plus skeletal tracking that turned people into these simple stick figure outlines. It wasn't supposed to be artistic. It was just a clean, functional interpretation of a human body. The catch was where the robot lived. It had been stashed for years in this tiny mezzanine office above the machine shop, like right above it. The building itself wasn't ancient, but it was part of the oldest section of campus, and the whole area had that forgotten wing feel. The office was cramped, dusty, and weirdly frozen in experience. Old carpet, stale air, outdated posters curling at the corners. It was the kind of room that made you feel like you shouldn't talk too loudly, like you might wake something up. And I'm not being dramatic. When I was poking around, I opened a closet and found a half-crushed snack box with an expiration date from a decade earlier, just sitting there, like someone meant to come back after lunch and never did. Anyway, One afternoon, I powered the robot up to check the video stream and test how well it could follow a person without getting distracted. Simple test. I stood in front of it, waved my arms a little, did a couple hops, just trying to give it an obvious target, then started walking around the room. It tracked me perfectly at first. Smooth, responsive, exactly what I wanted. Then, right in the middle of the test, it just stopped. Not like it lost me and searched, not like it glitched out and reset. It stopped tracking me and slowly turned its head toward a completely empty patch of air near the far side of the room. I remember laughing because it felt so dumb. Like, really? Come on. I stepped into its view again, hopped, waved, did the whole, "Hello, I'm right here" thing. Nothing. The robot refused to acknowledge me. It was locked onto that blank spot like it had just seen the most fascinating thing in the world. So I checked the laptop screen, thinking maybe the camera feed was bugging out. And there it was, a stick figure, clear as day, standing where the robot was staring. I wiped the lens. I shifted the angle. I rebooted the program. I even moved a chair into that area, thinking maybe it was interpreting something weird. The stick figure stayed. Eventually, I just quit for the day. I told myself it was a visual artifact, some depth map nonsense, and that tomorrow it would be gone. The next day, I came back up to the mezzanine office, already kind of uneasy, but trying not to be ridiculous about it. I powered everything up again, and this time, I didn't even test tracking. I just sat down and started combing through the code, figuring I'd adjust some thresholds or change how it classified a body. Out of nowhere, the robot chirped its little "target acquired" sound, like it had found a person, and it yanked hard enough that I had to grip it tighter. It twisted in my hands to stare past me, toward the wall and the window behind my shoulder. I turned to the laptop screen. 2 stick figures. Not fuzzy, not half-formed. 2 distinct tracked bodies. One looked like someone was casually leaning back against the wall, arms relaxed. The other was positioned like it had its elbows up and its chin resting on the windowsill, like someone peering in, watching. And that windowsill was way off the ground. The office hung over the machine shop floor. The window looked out across open space and equipment. There was no ledge outside, no catwalk, no balcony, no maybe someone's out there. Nothing. I slowly turned around to see what it could possibly be seeing. The moment I did, the robot played its little disappointed sound, lost target, and both stick figures vanished from the screen like someone had flipped a switch. There was nothing behind me. Nothing at the wall. Nothing at the window. No moving shadows. No reflections. No dangling coat. No weird shapes. No explanation that made me feel better. I just stood there for a second, completely still, listening to the hum of the building and the faint, distant sounds from the shop below, trying to convince myself I hadn't just seen what I'd seen. And look, I'm not saying I know what it was. I honestly don't. But whatever the robot thought it was tracking, it felt specific. Like it wasn't guessing. Like it was recognizing something that matched human too well to ignore. After that, I stopped going into that room alone. Full stop. I'd wait until someone else was free, or I'd bring a friend up with me under the excuse of, "Hey, can you spot me while I test this?" I never saw the stick figures again quite as clearly as that second time, but I never forgot how the room felt. And I definitely never forgot the way that robot acted like it wasn't empty up there. Like I just couldn't see what it could. So, this happened in my village a few years ago, and even now, when I think about it, My stomach still tightens the same way it did that morning. I had to leave early for a trip. One of those days where you don't even feel fully awake. You're just moving on autopilot. So I set an alarm for 4:15 a.m. The house was quiet, the air was cold, and the whole world outside felt like it was holding its breath. I went to the wash area and started brushing my teeth, half asleep, staring at nothing in particular. When I heard it. Dogs. Not barking, howling. Long, stretched-out howls coming from far away, like they were echoing off empty fields. Where I'm from, people have this old belief. When dogs howl like that, it means one of two things. Either the spirit of death is moving through the village, or someone nearby is about to die. And the scary part is, sometimes people say it because they've seen it match up before. I remember standing there with the toothbrush still in my mouth, frozen, listening. And then my heart started beating harder because the sound wasn't staying far away. It was getting closer. I slowly turned my head toward the road. In the dim light, barely any light really, I could make out shapes moving. A small pack of dogs, 5 or 6, maybe more, weaving in and out of each other. And they weren't just howling into the air. They were circling something. That's the part that still makes my skin crawl. Because the dogs were clearly following something in the middle. But I couldn't see what it was. It wasn't like there was a person walking calmly, or a cart, or anything obvious. Just movement, a presence, and the dogs kept looping around it, howling like their throats were going to split open. As it came nearer, my thoughts got darker fast. I remember thinking, someone is dying. Somebody is about to die. And without even realizing it, I started shrinking back, trying to hide behind the doorway. Like if whatever it was couldn't see me, it would just pass by. The howls were so loud up close it felt unreal, like someone had turned the volume of the entire night to maximum. And it was still dark, the kind of dark where everything looks like a shadow pretending to be something else. It reached right near my house, and I forced myself, just for a second, to look more carefully. I saw the dogs clearly. I saw them circling. I saw there was space in the middle where something should have been. But the thing itself, I couldn't make it out. My eyes couldn't hold it properly, like my brain refused to draw a clear picture. It moved past my house and continued down the road. Then it slowed and stopped right in front of a nearby home, Arjun's house, the boy who lived a short walk away. That moment felt like a scene from a horror film, except it was real, and it was happening in my own street. And then, it turned around. It came back in my direction. I don't care how brave anyone thinks they are. When something like that turns back toward you in the dark with a pack of dogs screaming around it, your body decides for you. I ran. Not a dramatic run, not a heroic run, just pure panic. I rushed back inside and shut myself in my room like a child, breathing hard, listening. After a while, the sounds began to drift away again, fading down the road the same way they came. I went to the window and watched, but I couldn't see anything except darkness and the occasional flicker of movement from the dogs. When it finally went silent, I stayed inside, and I didn't leave. I actually canceled my trip. I told myself I was tired, or it could wait, but honestly, I just didn't want to step outside again. She said, "Arjun is gone." That boy, the one whose house the howling stopped at, had died. Later we found out the details. He'd left home around 5 a.m. and jumped in front of a train. And the reason? The reason made it even heavier. His girlfriend, Mira, had taken her own life just a couple of days earlier. People said he hadn't been sleeping. He hadn't been eating. He'd been walking around like his soul wasn't fully inside him anymore. After that, I couldn't stop replaying the howling in my mind. Because what were the dogs following? At first, I'll be honest, I leaned into the old village belief. I kept thinking, that was death moving through the road. That was something spiritual. And when I told people, some of them laughed and called it superstition. Some rolled their eyes like I was being dramatic. But I kept thinking, I was there. I heard it. I saw it. How do you laugh at something someone actually witnessed? And later, much later, I started reading, trying to find an explanation that wasn't just fear. Here's the most believable thing I found, and it actually stayed with me. When a person is in extreme distress, deep grief, panic, unbearable emotional pain, the body can change in ways we don't always understand. Stress hormones spike, scent and sweat chemistry shifts, breathing changes, the whole system goes into crisis. And animals, especially dogs, pick up tiny signals that we can't. They notice what our human senses ignore. So maybe what the dogs were doing wasn't supernatural at all. Maybe they were sensing a trail of anguish, something in his body, in his scent, in the air around him, something that said, this person is not okay. And they followed it. That's the part I hold on to now, because it turns the story into something that matters. If you ever hear dogs howling like that near your home, like they're tracking something, like they're restless and searching, please don't just brush it off. Don't just say, oh, it's nothing, and go back to sleep. Maybe somewhere close by, someone is hurting so badly they can't see any way out. And if you find them, if you check on them, speak to them, sit with them, even for a moment, maybe you'll do what nobody did for Arjun. Maybe you'll pull them back from the edge. So, I should have listened to Father Miguel. I really should have. You know how it is when you're young and you think you're slick, half paying attention, half trying to be seen. That morning in the little mission, I wasn't focused on the homily at all. I was busy catching Marisol's eye from across the pews, smiling like an idiot every time she glanced back. I thought it was harmless, sweet even, like love couldn't possibly invite trouble. After Mass, Father Miguel stopped me at the door. His hand was warm when he shook mine, and he looked at me the way men like him do, like they can see every dumb thought you've ever had. Did you like the sermon today? He asked. I put my whole heart into it. Yes, Padre, I said quickly. It was very good. He didn't let me off easy. What did you like about it specifically? And that's when my mouth betrayed me. I stammered something useless, all of it. Very inspirational. And he gave me this small, patient smile. Thank you, my son, he said. Just remember, I can see a great deal from the pulpit, and you'll learn more about God from me than you will from your sweetheart. I felt my ears burn. I couldn't even look up. Marisol heard him too. She was outside by the hitching rail, arms folded, trying to hide her grin. I walked over, pretending I wasn't smiling back. Have you thought any more about what I asked you? I said. I tried to sound calm, but inside I was shaking. I'd been carrying that question around like a stone in my pocket. She took a breath, then frowned toward the horizon like she could see fear out there in the distance. I have, she said. But people are saying there's fighting again, raids near the southern routes. What if we're not safe? Because, mi amor, I told her, leaning in like my confidence could protect us. They don't come up to my brother's land, and the other families won't cross those hills. They think that place is cursed. We'll be left alone. Her eyes searched mine. I remember that look, half terrified, half glowing. Then she nodded, small and final. Yes, she whispered. I'll go with you. We married not long after. Life on the ranch wasn't a song. It was work. An adobe house that was more practical than pretty. Dust in the corners no matter how much you swept. The sheep pressed close at night, so near their smell lived in our hair. Wool and manure, the sharp sourness of animals in a pen. But we were together, and for a while that felt like enough. Until her birthday. I'd saved for months. Not for something useful, no saddle, no tools, but for something beautiful. In town, we'd seen this glass bowl in a trader's stall, shimmering like oil on water. green and violet, then blue when the sun hit it right. It didn't belong on a ranch. That was the point. When she unwrapped it, she gasped like I'd handed her a piece of the sky. She called it the prettiest thing she'd ever owned. Her eyes got wet, and the way she looked at me, God, it made every hard day feel worth it. That night, I broke my brother's main rule. No big fires after dark. But I wanted to celebrate. I wanted light and laughter and the feeling that nothing could touch us. So I built a bonfire and roasted meat over it, and the stars above us looked endless and indifferent. Marisol went inside to find a place for her new treasure, and that's when I saw them. Eyes. Yellow. Too high off the ground to be a coyote, not an owl, not anything that made sense. My dog, Chico, had been growling low all evening, like he was arguing with the dark. Now he backed away, tail tucked, whining like he didn't recognize the world anymore. I didn't want to leave the sheep, didn't want to look away. So I did the stupidest thing a man can do when he's scared and proud. I threw a stick at the eyes, closer. And there was a smell, suddenly, like the day after butchering, like blood that's had time to sour. Marisol came back outside, smiling, holding the bowl like it was a baby. I found a good place for it. Go inside, I cut in. Too sharp, too fast. Get my gun. She didn't argue. She just moved, quick and quiet, and came back with my musket. The eyes were closer now, a shape behind them. Not a bear, not anything I could name. My heart was punching my ribs so hard I thought it might crack. And then it spoke. Not in some animal sound, not a howl. It spoke like a man. Why weren't you paying attention in church, Tomas? Father Miguel's voice, clear as if he were standing beside me. Marisol screamed, this sudden, raw sound that yanked the air out of my lungs. Her whole body jerked back like the voice had touched her. You should have listened, the thing said again. Still Father Miguel. Calm. Near. We need to go in, Marisol whispered. She was trembling, teeth clicking. All right, I said, and we moved toward the door. But something inside me snapped. Anger, maybe. Humiliation. Like I'd been caught misbehaving by the world itself. I didn't ask for this. I didn't deserve this. I raised the musket and fired. The shot tore through the night. The flash lit the yard for a heartbeat, and the eyes vanished. I dragged Marisol inside and slammed the door hard enough the frame shook. For a moment I stood there listening, praying, willing it to be over. Then the sheep started screaming. Not bleating, screaming. By morning, every one of them was dead, torn apart like they were made of paper. The pen looked like a storm had ripped through it. And Marisol was burning up. Fever so fierce her skin looked gray, slick with sweat. She couldn't stop shivering even though she was hot to the touch. Right before she slipped into this restless, awful sleep, she grabbed my wrist and whispered, "Don't stare into its eyes." I wanted to take her to a doctor. The nearest town was a long day by wagon, maybe longer if the road was bad. I started packing anyway, desperate and shaking. But our mule was dead too. Ribs torn open like someone had cracked it apart for sport. By the time I had supplies ready, the sun was already leaning west. I told myself we'd leave at dawn, that we'd rest and go when we had light, that maybe it only came when the fire was lit, that maybe it would forget us if we stayed quiet. So I didn't light one. That night came down heavy. No coyotes, no crickets. Even the world's usual noises seemed to step back. At about 10, it started again. "Tomas," Father Miguel called, soft and pious. "Come out and pray with me. If you'd listened in church, you'd know how." Marisol whimpered from the bed. She was awake, barely. I crouched by the window with the musket loaded, knowing deep in my bones it wouldn't matter. Then the voice came closer. "Come out, if you want your dog." My stomach flipped. I had buried Chico myself. I'd seen the flies. I knew what was in that shallow grave. Rage rose up so hot it made me reckless. I threw open the window and fired into the dark. For a blink, the muzzle flash showed something tall, human-shaped but wrong, draped like a traveler, but with no face where a face should be. Just shadow and the suggestion of bone. Then silence. As I fumbled to reload, a new sound began. Claws on adobe. Slow scratches, dragging along the walls like a child running fingertips over a fence. It circled the house, unhurried, like it owned the place. It stopped at the door. 3 knocks. Polite. "I only want to come in and bless your home," it said, still Father Miguel. Serene, holy, mocking. The scratching returned, deeper now, wood splintering. Not pounding, not rushing, just patient destruction, as if time itself were on its side. Marisol pushed herself up beside me, pale as moonlight, clinging to the wall. "Mi amor," I whispered, choking on panic. "It's digging through the door." She swallowed hard. "Then I'll feed it." I stared at her like she'd gone mad. "No, you need to lie down." "We don't have another idea," she said, and her voice was so calm it frightened me more than her fever did. "Where's the basket?" "In the corral," I said. "But you can't." She reached up and took the shimmering bowl from the shelf like it was sacred. "Then I'll use this," she murmured. Hands shaking, she filled it with tortillas and stew. The scraping paused. It was listening. Marisol lifted the latch. The night outside seemed to inhale, cold and hungry. She stepped out holding the bowl in both hands. I followed right behind her, musket raised, heart trying to climb out of my throat. "I'm coming out with food," she called into the dark. Silence. Then, in Father Miguel's voice, gentle as a blessing, "Bring it." We turned left. A figure stood just beyond the reach of the firelight, still, robed, like an old wanderer watching us. For a heartbeat, the world froze. Then it moved, not walking, not running. It struck, so fast it didn't feel real. The bowl shattered with a sound like thin ice breaking. Pieces burst outward in a spray of glittering color, flying into the yard. And then it was on us. The sound Marisol made wasn't a scream. It was like the breath got ripped out of her, sharp, final, stolen. Her body folded beside the broken offering like a doll dropped by a careless hand. I tried to run. Claws tore into my back. Something hot filled my mouth. I tasted blood and dirt and terror. But the worst part, the part that still crawls under my skin when I remember, was the voice. Still Father Miguel, still calm. "There was an agreement," it said. "No home was to be raised here while the rivers kept flowing." That was the last thing I heard. Not the wind, not Marisol, not even my own breathing. Just that voice, like it had always lived in the land and was only reminding me. Now, listen. This is the part that makes people shake their heads and say it's just a story. But time does strange things to places like that. It remembers. More than a century and a half later, a man named Ethan was hiking north of Albuquerque, chasing the rumor of an old settlement he'd read about online. He didn't find the town from the post, but he did find the ruin. Adobe slumped into the earth like it was melting back into the ground. And scattered in the dirt near the threshold, half buried like teeth, little pieces of glass, green, violet, blue, still shimmering when the sun hit them. On the doorframe, deep parallel gouges, too deep, too clean, like something had carved them with intention. Ethan stood there a long time, not moving. He later told people the air felt wrong, like the place was holding its breath. He backed away. He didn't go inside. He didn't touch the glass. And when the wind shifted and turned cold, He told himself it was just the river he'd crossed earlier, still in his bones. Then he turned around and walked away, and he didn't look back, not once. So, I want to tell you something I don't usually say out loud, because it still feels a little strange to admit. My dad died when I was in 7th grade. Technically, he was my stepdad, on paper. But in every way that actually mattered, he was just my dad. The one who showed up. The one who stayed. The one who taught me how to laugh at dumb things and how to stand up for myself without turning mean. And here's the part that makes all of this complicated. I've never been the kind of person who's automatically sure about the afterlife. If anything, as I got older, I got more skeptical. I've lost other people in my family, people I adored, and I don't feel them around. No signs, no chills, no presence, nothing. So for a long time, I figured, that's just how it is. People die and we miss them, and our brains look for patterns because grief is unbearable. But then there's my dad. And I don't really know why. Why him? Why me? Why it shows up the way it does. But I've come to accept that sometimes it does. There are a bunch of moments I could tell you about, honestly, but I'll just give you a few. The ones that still sit in my chest like a weight and a comfort at the same time. The most recent one happened this year. I'd been waiting on a diagnosis for almost 5 years. 5 years of tests that went nowhere, appointments where I left feeling smaller than when I walked in, and this constant background noise of, maybe it's nothing, or maybe it's everything. It started with me getting sick right around the anniversary of my dad's death. Not on the exact day, but close enough that I noticed. Like the calendar was tapping me on the shoulder. I remember thinking, that's weird, and then immediately telling myself, it's a coincidence. Don't make it into a thing. Fast forward to this new doctor's appointment. New place, new building, that sterile waiting room smell. The kind of fluorescent lighting that makes everyone look exhausted. I didn't expect anything. I never expect anything anymore. I actually almost canceled. I was sitting there with my phone in my hand, hovering over the reschedule button, because I was tired. Tired of hoping, tired of being disappointed, tired of getting my own expectations used against me. But I had this feeling, quiet but persistent, like, no, go. So I went. And I'm not exaggerating when I tell you. The doctor walked in, did the basic questions, looked at my history, and then said, I know what this is. Just like that, no dramatic pause, no shrug, no, let's run another dozen tests. He explained it calmly, like it was obvious, like it had been waiting there the whole time and somebody finally turned the lights on. I sat there blinking like I'd forgotten how, and then it hit me. This appointment was the day before my dad's death anniversary, and it was almost exactly 5 years since the day I first got sick. I walked out feeling dizzy, like my body didn't know whether to cry or laugh or both. I went up to the front desk to schedule my follow-up, and while I'm standing there, a man walks in behind me. I barely noticed him at first. Just another person with a folder, that same worn-out expression everyone has in medical buildings. And then I heard him say his last name. My dad's last name. Not a super common one, not something you hear every day. My stomach dropped, and I turned so fast I probably looked rude. It was my dad's brother, my Uncle Ray. I know how it sounds. Believe me, I do. I stood there telling myself, okay, sure, coincidences happen. but it felt like too many layers stacking up perfectly to be nothing. Like someone had reached across time and said, "You're not doing this alone." And it didn't feel spooky. It didn't feel like a horror movie. It felt personal, familiar, like the kind of nudge my dad would have given me when I was about to back out of something important. Now, dreams are another thing. I don't dream about him often. It's not like he's visiting me every week, giving me gentle reassurance. If anything, it's the opposite. When he shows up in my dreams, it usually means something is about to happen, and I hate that I've learned to recognize that pattern. It's happened 3 times since he died. The first time, I dreamed about him, and the next day his old best friend, Mr. Don, was rushed to the hospital. Everyone kept saying he was going to be okay. You know how people do that, like optimism is a life raft? But I couldn't buy it. I was crying before anyone even admitted it was serious. I felt it in my bones. Mr. Don passed away the following day. The second dream was years later. In it, my dad didn't even say much. He was just there, watching, and I woke up with my heart pounding like it was trying to warn me. That morning, I got a call that someone I loved had been in a bad car accident. The kind where your knees go weak and you can't hear properly for a second because your brain is trying to protect you from the words. And then the third dream. That one was different. That one happened when I was sick, really sick. The kind of sick where you start doing the math in your head, where you're awake at 3 a.m. thinking, if something happens to me, what happens to my kids? In the dream, everything was clearer than usual, like the air had depth to it. My dad looked peaceful, content even. For the first time, he didn't look sad or distant or stuck. He looked like himself, like the version of him I remember from the kitchen on a normal day. And there were other people there, people I didn't recognize, but he seemed to, like he wasn't alone where he was. I ran to him, of course, because that's what you do in a dream when you love someone and you don't get a second chance in real life. And he stopped me. Not harshly, not coldly, just firmly, like, no, not yet. I tried to hug him and he wouldn't let me. And you'd think that would feel like rejection, but it didn't. It felt like protection. Like he was saying, you still have work to do. You still have people who need you. He guided me away in the gentlest way, like he was walking me back to the edge of something. And I woke up with this peace I can't really explain. The kind of peace you don't even realize you're starving for until it's handed to you. I didn't feel cured. I didn't feel magically healed. I just felt steadier, like I'd been reminded that I wasn't allowed to give up. And then there's the moment that still makes my throat tighten every time I try to tell it. When my daughter Lily was born, bringing her home felt like carrying a tiny, fragile miracle into a world full of sharp corners. You know? Like suddenly everything is dangerous. Everything has consequences. I thought everything was fine. But Marcus fell asleep. Just for a minute. He was exhausted. We both were. Somehow, some way, Lily slipped. It wasn't a big fall. It wasn't dramatic. It was the kind of thing people might brush off as, she's fine. But she landed face down into a pile of soft blankets. And Lily was the kind of newborn who slept like she'd been doing it her whole life. I used to have to wake her to eat. She didn't cry. She didn't startle. She didn't make a sound. She could have suffocated. I didn't know any of this yet. I was in the other room with Noah, and the house was quiet in that late-night way where you can hear the hum of the fridge and your own breathing. And then I heard a voice. Not a noise, not a creak, a voice. It said my name, clear as day, like someone trying to get my attention immediately. And I knew that voice. I hadn't heard it in years, but I knew it like muscle memory. My dad. It wasn't coming from the TV. There was no TV on, no radio, no video. Noah wasn't even crying anymore. He was standing right in front of me, hiccuping, calm. The voice sounded like it came from the hallway, and I went cold. I walked toward it, and then it sounded like it came from the bedroom. I remember thinking, that's impossible. And also, weirdly, of course. I opened the bedroom door, and there she was, Lily, face down, too still, wrapped in danger without even realizing it. Marcus asleep in the chair. I snatched her up so fast my arms actually hurt afterward. I turned her over, and she sputtered and blinked and finally made this tiny little sound, like she was annoyed I'd interrupted her nap. She was okay. She was okay, and I sank to the floor shaking, because the version of reality where I didn't walk in right then, I can't even let my brain stay there too long. And after that, silence. I never heard that voice again, not like that. But I didn't need to, because whether it was divine intervention or grief brain pattern seeking or some weird crack in the universe I'll never understand, something got me to that door in time. And if you asked me to prove it, I can't. I know I can't. All I can tell you is what it felt like. It felt like love. It felt like my dad, in the only ways he can reach me now, still being my dad. And maybe that's all I really need to know. So, I don't usually tell this story out loud, because saying it makes it feel real all over again. But I'm going to, just like I'd tell a close friend sitting across from me, because I've carried it long enough. As far back as I can remember, something has been following me. Not every single night, but often enough that I stopped calling it bad luck. It felt like an entity, like something with intent. And it didn't start with claws and blood or anything dramatic like that. At first, it was subtle, almost testing me. When I was about 14, I lived with my dad, my little brother, and a couple of kids my dad's girlfriend had. We'd just moved into this older place outside of town, and I got the upstairs loft because I was the oldest. The stairs were rough, old, squeaky, half wobbly, so my dad and I rebuilt them. Nothing fancy. Fresh boards, screws, solid steps. The kind of new wood that makes a very specific sound when someone walks on it. That's why it messed with me so much the first time I heard footsteps coming up. I remember getting home from school one afternoon, Dad still at work, the whole house quiet. I was upstairs in the loft changing for practice. Baseball, I think. Not football like I usually tell it. And suddenly I hear these heavy steps. Thump, thump, thump. Like someone coming up fast. I spun around expecting my brother. Expecting anyone. Nobody. I stood there with my shirt half on, heart hammering, listening for the next sound. Nothing. And I told myself, okay, old house, pipes, whatever. But deep down, I didn't believe it. A few weeks later, something happened that I still can't explain no matter how I try. I had to grab the mail before leaving, so I stepped out the front door and left it cracked open behind me, just enough that I could dart back in. I grabbed the envelope stack from the mailbox, turned around, and when I got close, like within arm's reach, the front door slammed shut. Not a gentle swing, a slam. I rushed up and grabbed the knob. It wasn't locked. There was no deadbolt click, no chain, nothing. But it wouldn't open. I pulled hard enough to make my shoulder hurt, like someone was leaning against it from the other side. Except, I was alone. When it finally gave, after what felt like forever, I stood there in the doorway staring at the empty living room, trying to convince myself it was just suction, or a draft, or the door swelling in the frame. Anything except what it felt like. Something messing with me. Then life shifted again. Dad's girlfriend, her 2 kids, and her father moved in. Her dad had just gotten out of prison and was staying with us because he didn't really have anywhere else to go. I remember one night we all went out to eat, everyone laughing, normal family stuff. We came home tired and went upstairs. We fell asleep. And about an hour later, there was this violent bang, so loud it sounded like something exploded inside the loft. I sat bolt upright in the dark, reached for the light, and I didn't get there because I tripped over a dresser. A 4-drawer dresser. It wasn't just tipped. It had fallen and slid out from the wall, like 2 or 3 feet, like someone shoved it. Nobody else was up there besides us. After that, it was never just weird sounds. It became this slow collection of moments. Little things moved, strange knocks, footsteps, cold patches in rooms that shouldn't be cold. Like whatever it was learning how much I'd tolerate. It wasn't just noise anymore. It interacted with me. I'd feel something tug my shirt like a kid trying to get my attention. I'd feel a poke in my side when I was trying to fall asleep. Once, I felt a soft breath in my ear, right against my skin, and I jumped so hard I nearly fell off the couch. And then, it started playing games. One morning I was homesick. Mason was at work, and I thought Talia was home too. I got in the shower, trying to sweat out whatever bug I had. Maybe 5 minutes in, I hear her voice, clear as day, calling from the hallway. "Hey, hurry up, I need the bathroom." I laughed and yelled back over the water. Okay, give me a sec." I turned the water off quick, got dressed fast, hung my towel, and opened the bathroom door to tell her I was done. The house was empty, dead quiet. No footsteps, no TV, no one in the kitchen. I checked the rooms. Nothing. I looked at the time, around 9 in the morning. She'd left for work before 6, and it hit me in this sick, icy way. That voice wasn't hers. Something had copied her, just to see if it could. Even now, thinking about it makes my stomach twist. Like, why do that? What was the point? To isolate me? To prove it could trick me? I still don't know. And then came the night that changed everything. I'd started a new job on second shift at a fabrication shop out near Yoder. I wasn't sleep deprived. I wasn't drinking. I wasn't messing with anything. I even went and got checked out later because I needed someone to tell me I was just stressed or sick or something. Nothing was wrong with me. That night I got home and everything felt normal. No weird noises. No cold spots. I took a shower, went to my room, plugged in my phone, and laid down. I started scrolling, just trying to wind down like anyone does. And I fell into this dream. Except it didn't feel like a dream. It felt like I was awake inside my own body. I had a nightmare. Something unrelated. Something that didn't connect to my life at all. And I snapped awake. But the moment I realized I was awake, I fell into another one. Then another. 3 times in a row. Like something was pushing me under, dragging me back down. Each one worse. When I finally broke out of the third one, I was wide awake, staring at my screen, heart racing. I remember thinking, okay, I'm awake now. It's over. That's when my phone cord got yanked out of the wall. Not slipped out, not wiggled loose, pulled. My phone jerked with it, like a hand grabbed the cable and ripped it. I sat up so fast my neck popped. I stared at the outlet and the dangling cord, trying to process what I'd just seen. And then my body froze. Like a switch flipped. I couldn't move my arms. Couldn't move my legs. My chest felt tight, like breathing through a straw. The only thing I could move were my eyes, and barely my head, just a little, side to side. I tried to scream, again and again and again. Nothing came out, not even a whisper. At that point, I wasn't thinking about ghosts or stories or movies. I was thinking, I'm going to die in this room and nobody will know why. Somehow, pure panic, pure instinct, I forced myself to roll. It took everything in me, like dragging a body that wasn't mine. I fell off the bed, hit the floor, and tried to get my phone to call Talia. Tried to trigger the voice assistant, anything, but I couldn't speak. I crawled with my arms. only my arms. Like my lower half didn't exist. I hauled myself to the door, inch by inch, until I finally got out into the living room, and I turned on everything. Every light, every lamp, the TV, anything that could make noise and fill the space. I sat there shaking, exhausted, terrified, waiting for morning like it was the only thing that could save me.
I don't know, but I believe in good and evil.
I believe there are things we don't see that still see us. And whatever that was, whatever has been around me for years, it didn't feel confused or random. It felt deliberate. And yeah, sometimes I still wake up with scratches or bruises that don't make sense. Sometimes I still feel like I'm being watched in a quiet room. Sometimes I still catch myself listening for footsteps on stairs, even when I know I'm alone. But I'm still here, and I'm not pretending anymore that it's nothing. One day I'll figure out what it is, or why it chose me. And until then, I guess I keep living my life with this shadow just outside the edge of the light. Hey, so before I tell you this, I want you to picture the kind of place where history doesn't feel past, where it feels stuck in the soil. We moved to North Georgia when I was around 10, close enough to the Chickamauga battlefield that people casually talked about it like it was just another landmark. But you could feel it. The woods, the low hills, the mist that sat in the mornings. Everything about that area felt heavy, like the land remembered too much. Our new place was an old farmhouse, deep red paint, a wide porch, 2 bright white columns out front that looked almost too clean against the color of the house. The kind of porch that should have felt welcoming. And honestly, at first, I was thrilled. For the first time in my life, I was getting my own room. No more sharing with my brother, no more listening to someone else breathe while I tried to fall asleep. The first day, while we were hauling boxes inside, I noticed a door up near the hallway ceiling line, like it led somewhere higher. It had a padlock on it. I asked my mom, "What's that?" She squinted at it like she'd never even seen it. "No idea. Probably an attic crawl space. The owner must have locked it for safety." And I remember shrugging like, "Sure, fine." Kids accept weird answers all the time. But then I carried the last box down toward the back of the house, the laundry room. And the second I stepped into that part of the place, my excitement just drained out of me. It was still bright outside, a sticky summer afternoon, the kind where heat shimmers off the driveway. Yet in that back room, I got goosebumps so fast it actually made me angry, because I didn't want to be scared in my new house. I tried to act normal, set the box down, and that's when I saw it. A door. Not on the wall, on the floor, like a trap door from a movie. I'd never seen one in real life. Of course I walked right over. Of course I put my hands on it. There was a latch, stiff, stubborn. I wrestled with it longer than I should have, and then, with a sudden scrape and pop, it gave way. The door swung up, and there was this drop, maybe 3 feet, down into a dirt-floored cellar that smelled like wet earth and old wood. I stared into that opening and felt my stomach turn cold. I slammed it shut so hard the whole floor thudded. I locked it again, hands shaking, and bolted out of that laundry room like something could reach up and grab my ankle. I found my brothers first, Eli and Mason, older than me, already acting like nothing could touch them. I blurted out, "There's a cellar. I opened it." Their eyes lit up like it was Christmas. "Show us." I didn't want to. I really didn't. But I followed anyway, because that's what younger siblings do. Pretend they're brave so they don't get left behind. We opened it again, and they climbed down like it was nothing. The second my shoes hit the dirt floor, that feeling came back, like being watched. Not just watched, studied. Like something in the dark was aware of our breathing, our little movements, the way our voices echoed. I stayed close to Eli, gripping his sleeve. We took a few steps, and the air felt thicker the farther we went, like the cellar didn't want us down there. We climbed back out fast, and right as I lifted my foot over the edge, something brushed my calf. Not like a cobweb, not like a piece of grass, like a hand passing by. But for weeks after that, it followed me, that sensation, those unseen eyes. Sometimes it felt like it came from the hallway, sometimes the corner of the kitchen, sometimes right outside my bedroom door at night, the way silence can feel crowded if you stare into it long enough. And nights were the worst. I was a kid, so of course I hated the dark. But in that house, nighttime felt different, like the dark wasn't empty, like it had weight. One night, I was half asleep, staring at the little plug-in nightlight in my room. It flickered, just once, then again, like something was messing with it. My eyelids got heavy, and I drifted off. And that's when the dream started. Except, it didn't feel like a dream. I saw myself in bed, like I was standing in my own room watching my body sleep. I remember that detail so clearly, the way my blanket was bunched around my legs, the soft rise and fall of my chest, and I started shivering, even in the dream. Then, creak. My closet door, slow, careful, like someone was trying not to be heard. I walked toward it. I didn't want to, but my feet moved anyway, like the dream was guiding me. I opened the closet and reached up for the pull string, because the closet light was one of those bare bulbs. My fingers wrapped around the string, and the floor dropped out from under me. I fell, hard, and landed on dirt. I was in the cellar. I could smell it again, that wet earth rot. I sat up fast, patting my arms, my ribs, my legs, expecting pain. But it was like my body was too shocked to feel anything. Then that sensation hit me, those eyes. I looked up, slowly, because I didn't want to. And there was a concrete slab in front of me that I knew hadn't been there the day we opened the cellar. It looked too solid, too deliberate, like a grave marker made into a table. And lying on top of it was my brother. Not Eli, not Mason, my other brother, the one we lost years before, the one whose name still made my mom's voice catch sometimes if she said it too fast. He looked wrong, gray, sunken, like he'd been underwater for too long, like he'd been kept somewhere he shouldn't have been kept. I felt tears rush up instantly, the kind you can't stop. I backed away, shaking so bad my teeth clicked. And that's when I saw her. Behind the slab, half in shadow, was a woman, tall and thin, hair long and stringy, black tangled with gray. She wore this dirty burgundy cloak, the fabric torn at the sleeves, hanging on her like old curtains. She was bent over the slab like she was guarding it, or feeding on it. I tried to breathe, but it felt like my throat had closed. I took another step back, and in one sharp, unnatural movement, she snapped her head up. Her eyes locked onto me like she'd been waiting. I ran. I ran like my life depended on it, scrambling across dirt, lunging for the cellar steps. I could feel her behind me even though I didn't dare look. I hit the trap door, shoved it up, fumbled, climbed, hands slipping, heart punching my ribs. I burst into the laundry room, sprinted down the hall, slammed my bedroom door, locked it, and dove under my covers like a little kid again, shaking and whispering, "No, no, no," into the blanket like it could protect me. At some point, the panic blurred into exhaustion. I fell asleep again with sunlight creeping into the room. And when I finally woke up for real, late morning, maybe closer to noon, I swung my legs over the bed. That's when I saw them. Bruises, blooming purple, and dirt, real dirt, caked along my calves and ankles like I'd been on my knees in soil. I just stood there staring, because the room was quiet and normal and bright. but my legs looked like I'd been somewhere I wasn't supposed to be. And even now, years later, I can still remember the exact feeling of that back room. Not fear like a jump scare, fear like a warning, like the house was trying to tell me something the moment I walked in, and I didn't listen. You know how every village has that one place people talk about in lowered voices? The spot you can walk past in daylight with a shrug, but once the sun goes down, you suddenly find you've got absolutely no reason to go anywhere near it. Well, where I grew up, that place was a patch of water we always called St. Bridget's Pool. It sits tucked away behind Hawthorne Wood, not far from the edge of the fields, and people swear it's haunted. Not in a silly, ooh, spooky way either. More in that quiet, certain way that makes your stomach tighten even if you don't want to believe it. And honestly, there's one story that's been told so many times around fires and pub tables that it's basically stitched into the village itself. It goes back to just after the war, when rationing still had everyone counting every scrap. Back then, if you could grow a bit extra or catch something from the streams, you didn't waste it. You traded it. You bartered. You kept your family going however you could. There was a lad in our village then. Folk called him Ned Harper, though I don't think anyone even remembered if that was his real name. He was young, wiry, always smelled faintly of river water and earth, and he lived for fishing. He'd haul out trout and eels from the local brooks and take them down to the old inn, the Fox and Lantern, to swap for ration coupons or whatever the landlord could spare. And one evening, as Ned was handing over a couple of slick, silver trout, one of the older regulars leaned in and said, casual as anything, "Ever heard of St. Bridget's Pool?" Ned frowned and shook his head. "Can't say I have." The old fellow's eyes lit up like he'd been waiting for that. "Big fish in there, proper old ones. That pool used to belong to the priory. Monks kept carp in it, way back. It's still up in Hawthorne Wood. Priory's long gone, but the pond stayed. Now, if you're a fisherman, that's like dangling treasure in front of your nose." Ned sat forward immediately. "Big carp, you say? You ever fished it?" The man gave a little snort. "Me? No. You need Sir Malcolm Weatherby's permission. Otherwise, it's poaching. And me and him, we don't exactly share a smile." Weatherby was a local landowner, one of those men with a big house, big fields, and a way of looking through you like you were part of the hedgerow. Ned, though, hadn't ever had trouble with him. So Ned asked the obvious question. "Well, if you've never fished it, how do you know there's carp in there?" The man took a long pull of his ale, wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, and said, "Because he's turned away everyone who's asked. Why else would he guard it so fierce? He's keeping them for himself. Miserly old sod." That was all it took. Ned couldn't stop thinking about it. So the next Sunday, because church was about the only place you could approach a man like Weatherby without being chased off his land, Ned waited until the service let out. Folks were drifting down the path, talking quietly, shaking hands, buttoning coats. Ned stepped in beside him and said, polite as you like, "Sir Malcolm, is it true there's an old pond in your woods? One the monks used to keep carp in?" Weatherby didn't even look surprised. He just nodded once. "Aye, old Priory Pond. Been there longer than any of us." Ned swallowed, nerves and excitement tangling together. Would you give me permission to fish it, sir? I'd put anything I caught straight back, unless you wanted it brought up to the house." And Weatherby, without missing a beat, said, flat as stone, "No." Just like that. No explanation. No, maybe. No, ask again later. Just no. So we asked again the next Sunday, and got the same answer. Then the Sunday after that, same answer. Then he tried bargaining, offered to do chores around the estate, offered to bring Weatherby every eel he caught for a month, promised to be respectful, promised he wouldn't take a single fish. Week after week, he kept at it, and week after week, Weatherby refused. Until one day, Ned did something a bit bolder. He showed up at the big house itself, and apparently by the third visit in as many days, Weatherby opened the door and actually groaned when he saw him. "Oh, for heaven's sake," he muttered. "Not you again." Ned stood there, hat in hand, cheeks pig from the cold. "I'm sorry, sir, I truly am, but I can't stop thinking about that pool. Please, just once. Say yes and I'll never bother you again. I swear it." Weatherby started to shut the door. Ned rushed on, desperate now. "Why won't you let me? Why is it such a problem?" And that's when Weatherby snapped, eyes flashing like he'd been poked in a bruise. "Because of the prior," he barked. Ned blinked. "The prior?" Weatherby's jaw worked like he was trying not to say it, but it spilled out anyway. Years ago, when the harvest failed and folk were starving, the prior refused to share the carp. The villagers dragged him from the priory and killed him. Then they set the place alight to hide what they'd done. Ned, impatient and young, waved it off. "That was ages ago. I'm not afraid of old stories." Weatherby's face hardened. "You should be." But Ned barely heard him. The word yes was already ringing in his skull. Because finally, whether out of exhaustion, irritation, or some hope that it would be the last of Ned Harper, Sir Malcolm Weatherby threw his hands up and said, "Fine, go on then, but don't come crying to me when—" Ned was already running. He grabbed his tackle and shot across the fields like he was late for his own wedding. By the time he reached the edge of Hawthorne Wood, the light was starting to thin. One of those evenings where the world goes gray and flat and the trees seem taller than they should. He found the pool easily enough, and he was disappointed right away. It wasn't some shining hidden lake. It was choked with weed, strewn with dead branches, and so murky it looked more like old stew than water. There were only a few clear patches, and through them it seemed shallow, too shallow for anything big to live in. Still, he'd come all that way. So he set up anyway, small float, a bit of worm, thinking maybe he'd at least pull out a minnow or an eel. And the moment that float settled, just a heartbeat later, it vanished. Not a gentle bob, not a curious nibble. It went under like something had grabbed it with a fist. Ned's line snapped with a crack. And suddenly, he wasn't disappointed anymore. He was buzzing. Because that wasn't a small fish. That was something with weight. Something angry and strong and ancient. He sat back against a tree, hands shaking as he started changing his gear. Stronger line, sturdier hook. The sort of setup you'd use if you truly believed you might hook a monster. But in the middle of it, he glanced up. And there, on the far bank, half hidden among the trees, stood a figure. An old man. Or at least, it looked like an old man. He was dressed in ragged, soot-dark robes, hanging off him like old curtains. His face was pale in the fading light, and his eyes, God, his eyes, looked raw and bloodshot, like he hadn't blinked in years. He didn't speak, didn't move. He just stared straight at Ned, like Ned didn't belong in the world anymore. Ned shot upright so fast he forgot where he was and slammed his head into a low branch. Lights out. He scrambled up, heart pounding, squinting into the dark. The far bank was empty. No old man. But beside him, his tackle, his precious rod and kit, was smashed, splintered, like someone had taken a boot to it, or a stone. Ned didn't stop to gather anything. He didn't even grab the pieces.
he ran. And that's where the story usually ends, told with a pause and a look around the fire, like everyone's checking the tree line just in case. Now, here's the thing. People round my way still insist most of the mirror carp in our local ponds are descended from those old prairie fish, passed down through generations like a living rumor. And the legend says the prior's cruelty cursed him, that he can't leave, that he's stuck guarding what he refused to share, day and night, making sure no hungry villager ever takes his carp again. As for me, I've been up to St. Bridget's pool once, in daylight. It's exactly how they describe it. Weedy, dark, surrounded by twisted trees and nettles and thorn. The air feels thick there, like the place is holding its breath. I didn't stay long. And at night? No. I'll admit it, I don't go anywhere near it after dark. I've never cast a line into that water either. Because I've never met anyone in the village who's fished it, and I've never met anyone who's spent a night up there. Not and come back laughing anyway.